liaison committee weren't aiming it at a particular group. We want to get the balance right and protect the family farm. He said the vast majority of family farms won't be affected by the change to inheritance tax. Many viewers and listeners might disagree with that, Martin. Just finally, he also thinks, quite interestingly here, to get to the 1.5 million new homes being built by the next election in England, he says here that he thinks that current environmental protections, he suggests, could be a bit too strict. Some are excessive. I wonder whether it might try and water down some of those issues with building new homes to get more homes built. OK, we've got to move on. Loads to talk about later in the show. Thank you very much, Chris Hope. Excellent as ever. Now moving on, because earlier this afternoon, the man accused of murdering Carol, Hannah and Louise Hunt with a crossbow has also pleaded not guilty to their murders. To tell us more is GBNews national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, bring us up to speed.
Well, Martin, Carl Clifford, a 26-year-old, has also today been charged with rape. And as we understand it, at Cambridge Crown Court, that charge relates to Louise Hunt, who was killed, it said, with crossbow injuries when she was found at her home in Bushey in Hertfordshire on July the 9th by the police. Her sister also suffered crossbow injuries in that killing, but the mother, Carol, stabbed multiple times, wounds to her chest and her abdomen. That was what was heard at Cambridge Crown Court earlier this afternoon. But that rape charge relates to the same occasion, the 9th of July, with Carl Clifford being detained. There's his face on your screens now, on the 10th of July in Enfield, where he is from, after the police sparked a manhunt. So he's pleaded not guilty to those 3 charges of murder. He's also pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of possession of an offensive weapon, which we understand relates to a crossbow and also a 10-inch blade. And there's a further charge of false imprisonment, which he's also pleaded not guilty to. That alleges that Mr. Clifford assaulted and unlawfully and injuriously imprisoned Louise Hunt and detained her against her will. Now, a provisional trial date has been set following those not guilty pleas for the 3rd of March, also at Cambridge Crown Court. And Carl Clifford attended today via a video link from HMP Belmarsh. Because that new charge of rape has been added to the indictment, there was no opportunity to respond with a plea at this hearing today, but a provisional trial set for the 3rd of March next year.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, there, for bringing us up to speed. Excellent as ever. Thank you. Now, coming up, GBNews heads north, speaking to the people of Blackpool, the fine people of Blackpool, to try and find out what they think of their home and their hometown and the issues that matter most to where they live and what's gone wrong with Broken Britain. We'll be live there next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As Strictly Come Dancing approaches its iconic Blackpool episode, marking halfway through the competition, visually impaired dancers across the country have spoken out about how groundbreaking the casting of Chris McCausland is, who suffers from, if I hope I'm saying this correctly, retinitis pigmentosa, and they've found him particularly inspiring. We've been talking, Sean, about how the casting of Strictly has been inspiring to so many people, but I imagine there'll be lots of people who are watching this at home finding your story of resilience really inspiring, because you've obviously really been through it. Is dancing something that has sort of, you know, helped keep you going through all of those troubles? And what does it mean to you to see casting like this on a show like Strictly Come Dancing?
Like I say, all the things I went through. So those 9 years when I wasn't dancing, you know, I was still dancing in my head and just banging on to other people. Very much not just people with sight loss. You know, I've been a big advocate for people with social isolation. So many people on their own now, social anxiety, especially since COVID. And I just want people to get out. The stuff that I'm doing and all the stuff Chris is obviously doing, it will inspire others. Again, like I say, just not people just with sight loss. I had so many people come up to me in the early days, guys, and now that say, you know what, Shawnee, I I've seen you do it, so I'm just going to do it. But you just got to get over yourself, because if you bother to do the maths, because all it is maths and walking.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Maths and walking actually sounds quite difficult.
Sean, thank you.
Oh, come on, mate. Can you shout? Can you walk? Crack on.
Sean, you're an inspiration. Thank you, mate, for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. You're a star, and so glad.
Just before I go, I'm just going to say this is Kev. Here's Kev.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:24 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, please tune in later on for Nigel Farage live on GB News this evening at 7 p.m. for his Christmas special. Look at him in his magnificent Santa hat, where he'll be joined by an audience of 400 people live from Kent. Farage on tour, 7 p.m. here on GB News. Now it's time now for our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway this year. I'm afraid it's not quite as much as the $10 million from Elon Musk, but it is your chance to win a mouth-watering £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away here at GB News, and it could all be yours. And here's all the details that you need to win that whopping, juicy, tasty 50 grand tax-free cash.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bosh. Well, as always, GB News wants to hear from you as you tell us about your opinion on the issues that matter the most to you. And today we're up to Blackpool to hear from residents there about the ongoing cost of living crisis and how they're coping with the country's ongoing economic problems. I'm delighted to say I'm now joined by GB News North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper, who is in Blackpool for us today. Sophie, welcome to the show. Blackpool, a beautiful town back in the day, somewhere I'm very, very familiar with. Used to holiday there as a lad there in Skegness. But of course, like many forgotten, overlooked coastal towns, Blackpool is now quite a different place. Tell us, what have people been telling you there today?
Well, you're absolutely right, Martin. It is a beautiful town, and I'm sure lots of our viewers will have fond memories of this seaside town from when they were younger. But as you say, as the tourism over the years has declined, so has Blackpool itself. Now, we've been here on the ground today on the residential areas speaking to locals about issues that concern them, issues like homelessness, issues like migration, issues like poverty and deprivation, issues like the winter fuel allowance being cut and how it's affecting them. So now, by some TV magic, we can speak to another local resident. If I just knock on this door, we're hoping he's going to be there and ready to speak to us. Absolutely, here he is. Joining us now is Paul Gorton. Paul, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I know you've lived in Blackpool for around a decade now, haven't you? What have you noticed in recent years has changed about this town that once was a thriving seaside town?
A lot of these guest houses have been bought up with property developers and turned into HMOs, which is bringing in people from out the area because they're long-term unemployed. They're only allowed to stay in rented accommodation so long and then they have to move on. So it makes Blackpool an ideal place to be, because there's lots of these little flats, £100 a week, just move and swap about as they will.
The issue with those cheap flats, though, of course, is that a lot of them are quite squalid, aren't they? They're not very healthy places to live. So it's no wonder that one of the other reasons we're here today, Martin, is that last week it was revealed that Blackpool has now overtaken Glasgow for having the lowest life expectancy for men in anywhere in the UK. The age is now 73. How does that make you feel, knowing that you live somewhere that has the lowest life expectancy for men anywhere in the UK?
Well, not very good, because I'm getting towards that and I'm starting to worry. But like I say, it's because of the setup as it is. You know, people who come in here because of the cheap rental accommodation, you get your long-term unemployed, people with drug addicts. Hospitals are swamped with all these drug addicts, alcohol problems. Not that it's their fault, they must have underlying problems, but until you get to the bottom of that, you're always going to have this.
But it all contributes, doesn't it? Now, I know one issue that you've perhaps been particularly concerned about is that the cut of the winter fuel allowance. I know that's something that's affected you, and you've said it's something you're going to have to be mindful of.
Yeah. Well, we're looking and we can absorb it. We'll just have to make a few cutbacks, but I know there's some pensioners that haven't got works pensions or anything like that, and they're going to feel it.
Particularly people in Blackpool, of course, which is an area that particularly suffers with poverty. In terms of what the government could do to improve Blackpool, to support its residents, what would you like to see them do, this new Labour government?
Well, I'm reading we get district grants all over the country, different districts. And up this area, it's 30-35% cuts we've had lately. And down south, it's only 15%. Why is this? The north-south divide seems to be getting bigger, not shrinking.
That seems to be the crux of the issue, doesn't it? I think a lot of people up north are concerned about levelling up. Do you believe the government can help with Blackpool, or do you believe that they will help with Blackpool?
Well, we're hoping so. We haven't been in power long, but what I've seen up to now, it's not been clever. Like I said, they cut the winter fuel payments. These, is it WASPA ladies that are complaining about shortage in their pension? They've been given the elbow. Seems to me the pensioners are getting all the stick at the minute.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really interested in hearing your take there. There we are. Lots of people in Blackpool have a lot of questions about this government and if they are going to be able to step up and help this struggling seaside town.
Sophie Reaper, excellent report there. You know, I always just feel guilty knocking on people's doors in the winter when I was canvassing for votes because, you know, their central heating is pouring out of their door there, Sophie. But on a serious point, people in Blackpool have been failed, and we've seen this in Lowestoft, in Clacton, in Skegness, the end of the line. So many towns just been overlooked and forgotten, hollowed out. Tourism went, nothing replaced it. They haven't been helped, they haven't been levelled up. Social problems have been dumped onto these areas because the housing stock is cheap, be it drug addicts, be it asylum seekers, you name it. These places are being hollowed out, they're being impoverished, they're being betrayed, I think, by successive governments. It breaks my heart, it genuinely does. And I think we've got to do something serious about it to address those very, very concerning issues. Sophie Reaper, thank you as ever. Excellent reporting and a very Merry Christmas to you. Thank you very much, darling. Now, lots more still to come to you now, 4 o'clock, including the Defence Secretary has opened the door to British troops being sent to Ukraine to help train the country's soldiers. But is it really wise to spend our already shrinking armed forces over there and give them £250 million when Donald Trump might have this war over in just a month's time? But first, here's your headlines, and it's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Sir Keir Starmer is facing questions from senior MPs and government departments at the Liaison Committee this afternoon. The questioning has so far focused on the state of the UK economy and has now moved on to discuss potential trade deals for the country and house building. The committee comes as the Guardian newspaper reported last night that up to 100 Labour MPs could vote against the government's decision to refuse a payout for the WASPy women. And it's also been reported that Sir Keir Starmer will appoint around 30 new Labour peers today. Sue Gray, Sir Keir's former Downing Street Chief of Staff, and former Labour MPs are tipped to be on the list. As you've been hearing this afternoon, 26-year-old Kyle Clifford has pleaded not guilty to the murders of Carol, Hannah and Louise Hunt at their family home in Bushey in July. That not guilty plea comes after Cambridge Crown Court also heard a short time ago that Clifford has been further charged with rape. The 26-year-old is accused of fatally shooting Louise and Hannah Hunt with a crossbow and stabbing Carol Hunt to death at their home in Hertfordshire. A trial date has now been set for March. The Bank of England has held interest rates at 4.75% as it warned about heightened uncertainty in the economy following the budget here at home and the election in the US. The Monetary Policy Committee said it was keeping rates unchanged earlier this afternoon after cutting the level in August and again in November. 6 members of the committee wanted to keep the base rate at 4.75%, while 3 voted for a 0.25 percentage point reduction. Governor Andrew Bailey said the central bank needs to make sure inflation returns to its 2% target level on a sustained basis. Water bills in England and Wales are to rise by an average of 36% over the next 5 years, water regulator Ofwat announced today. That's the equivalent of an extra £31 a year. The regulator said the increase would pay for a £104 billion upgrade of the water sector to deliver substantial, lasting improvements for customers and the environment. Ofwat is already facing backlash, with Liberal Democrat environment spokesman Tim Farron describing the regulator as toothless and defunct. It comes as around 58,000 homes in Hampshire are without water today due to a technical issue, according to Southern Water. The response to that incident is being coordinated by the government. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now, let's get your finance report.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2581 and €1.2102. The price of gold is £2,063.99 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,094 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into this evening, we'll see showers die away, leaving plenty of dry spells overnight. Staying fairly cold, though, with some rain arriving later from the northwest. And the reason it's felt a lot chillier this afternoon is because we've got a cold northerly flow of air which is stretching across the country. Plenty of isobars on the chart too, which is adding on to that brisk northwesterly flow of air too. But largely as we head into this evening, there'll be plenty of clear skies as we see those showers die away. Too breezy for a widespread frost, though we may see some pockets around sheltered rural areas. And then by the time we reach dawn, we'll see some outbreaks of rain just start to clip western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland too. And it will start to turn quite blustery here too by the time we reach Friday morning. Then through the course of Friday, we'll continue to see these outbreaks of rain slowly edge their way southeastwards. Looking at the brighter colours, we can see that rain is going to be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly as it starts to move its way into western coasts, similar towards western parts of Northern Ireland too. This rain could be quite heavy at times. Largely dry elsewhere, though we can't rule out a few showers across Wales and parts of southwest England. And there will still be plenty of dry weather around on Friday, away from this area of rain, which will continue to gradually move its way southeastwards, and this still once again heavy and persistent at times. But to the far north of this, it will turn clearer, though still once again fairly blustery showers moving in around coasts. These could be heavy with some hail at times, may even see some snow across some hilly areas. Temperatures up by a degree or two, but still feeling fairly chilly in those brisk northwesterly winds. Then through the course of the evening, we'll eventually say goodbye to that area of cloud and rain as it moves its way towards the southwest. Clearer behind, though we will gradually see some more outbreaks of rain move their way in from the northwest. And fairly unsettled over the weekend with some strong winds at times, so do stay up to date with our warnings. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel. Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. The A686 in Alston in Cumbria is currently closed by Front Street. A collision there starting to cause some delays. A lane shut on the westbound M62 still. Junction 12 to 11 struggling from the Eccles interchange through towards Birchwood. There's a breakdown there, so that lane closure in place to assist and still slow going. Delays towards Ipswich still. The eastbound A14 has a lane out. A two-lorry collision just after Woolpit at 47 are still causing delays. Anti-clock M25 slow from Enfield to Potters Bar. That's junction 25 to 24. Now there's roadworks there and there was a broken down car earlier. And if you're heading between Wales and England, there's queues either side of the M48 Severn Bridge because of the increasing wind speed. The up and over's in place, hence the queues between Wales and England. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:39 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, last month, a ship called the MC Ruby, it dumped around 300 tonnes of potentially explosive cargo into the North Sea, just off the coast of Great Yarmouth in Norfolk. And this was over fears that the ammonium nitrate fertiliser had been contaminated with fuel oil. Well, subsequently, the dumping caused outrage from environmentalists, local businesses and the local MP, Rupert Lowe, who says that he has spent weeks trying to uncover the true extent of what has happened and has labelled it as absolutely shocking. And I'm joined now by Rupert Lowe, the Reform UK MP for Great Yarmouth, to go over this. Rupert, always a pleasure. So, sounds like an astonishing story. Tell us more.
Well, Martin, good afternoon. Good to be on your show as usual. Yeah, this is an extraordinary situation, and I think it's an example of the parliamentary sovereignty being gradually eroded by a selection of unelected, unaccountable quangos who don't appear to be accountable to anybody. It's quite extraordinary that as the elected MP, i.e. the representative of the people of Great Yarmouth, who ultimately should be playing my part in a sovereign parliament, which should be omnipotent, I was actually excluded throughout the entire charade from the 28th of October right through the way through till the 28th of November, when the minister briefed me after the event, after all this, what I called eco-terrorism had taken place, and 300 tonnes or thereabouts of ammonium nitrate, better known to you or I as fertiliser, which I handle on a regular basis on my farm. Not only did they dump that in the sea 12 miles off my constituency, Great Yarmouth, they also dumped the plastic bags with it, which is quite extraordinary because if I do my drilling and I fill my drill with ammonium nitrate or my fertilizer spinner, if I end up with a plastic bag which is recycled. Now, if I was to dump that bag in my river on my farm, I would quite rightly be prosecuted, probably by the Environment Agency, and end up with a very large fine and probably a criminal record and all sorts of other things. So it's quite extraordinary, having done a huge amount of work on this, that the elected member was effectively excluded from all decision-making. And somebody's been lying to me. Either the local government's been lying to me or national government has been lying to me. I suspect it's national government from the briefing papers I've seen, but I'm raising it at an adjournment debate in Parliament at 5 o'clock this evening, where I'm going to set out what I believe has happened, where I believe the blame lies, and I'm going to request a parliamentary inquiry, Martin, because I think Parliament needs to start to assert itself as the ultimate if you like, guide to the way in which the country is run. And the more I dig into these things, the more I think the whole country has become dysfunctional, and we must change it if we're to rescue a modicum of common sense.
OK, Rupert, it's worth pointing out the government have denied that the sovereignty of Parliament is being undermined by quangos. They categorically denied that, and also they would counter the claims of eco-terrorism. But Rupert, while I've got you here, can I please ask you about the Elon Musk, what's becoming now a bit of a hoo-ha about his potential donation to Reform UK, and more to the point, the Electoral Commission suddenly getting on their haunches about this. Isn't it funny, Rupert, how they seem to keep their heads down when foreign money is coming in from George Soros to fund the Remain campaign. Isn't it funny how they suddenly knocked on the door of the Brexit Party HQ when you were an MEP for them with myself back in May 2019? They're trying to change the rules, Rupert. Do you think they're just changing the rules because they're running scared? And more to the point, is the Electoral Commission being weaponised against reform?
Well, first of all, Martin, let me say that Elon Musk is a breath of fresh air as far as the American sort of situation goes. He's clearly a self-made man. He's got a very, very good brain. He's created some extremely successful businesses, and I think I'm delighted that somebody like him is indeed engaging to try and save us from what he describes as Britain going full-on trot. With regard to the establishment now bleating like stuck pigs about funding for reform, let me tell you, it's not just Elon Musk who's beginning to wake up to the fact that Reform are going to win the next general election, and in all probability, Nigel Farage will be Prime Minister. I think there are a lot of other people in the country who are now woken up to the fact that the current way in which we're governed is dysfunctional. We need disruption, and we need complete change. And we need some people from outside the existing political establishment who are going to enforce and deliver that change. People with real life experience. And this is the real issue. The problem we've got is a lot of people in power now. None of them have real life experience. And a bit like the MV Ruby, I think you said the MC Ruby, it's the MV, the Motorversal Ruby. They ultimately, a lot of the local and national government officials were scared by a suggestion that this was a situation similar to Beirut. Now, if you've dealt with ammonium nitrate, as a farmer has, like I have, ammonium nitrate's driven around in 40-ton lorries across the country. It's distributed regularly. It's landed at ports regularly. It plays a big part in growing our food. So I think the penny is dropping. People want change now, and I think the British people are increasingly going to turn to reform. And when you hear the establishment running scared like they are, Martin, it's hardly surprising that they're now going to try and change the rules. They've used those rules to their advantage for a very long time, and as soon as they see a disruptor trying to do the same thing, and it must all be done legally, as we know, they're pretty sore. So I mean, I think it's a case of bad losers.
OK, Rupert Lowe, we have to leave it there. Very best of luck with that debate in Parliament. Let us know how it goes. And in response to Rupert Lowe's comments that this is an example of sovereignty of Parliament being undermined by an elected quangos, to repeat, a government spokesman says this: these claims are incorrect. The port and ship operator safely carried out an operation with the advice from the MCA, the HSE and environmental regulators. The UK has some of the most rigorous maritime safety standards in the world, and we worked with all involved to ensure that the MV Ruby and the handling of this cargo met those safety standards. Ammonium nitrate is not a persistent chemical, and with sufficient dilution it will dissipate without leaving a trace. And that's a government spokesperson responding there to the claims made by Rupert Lowe, the MP for Great Yarmouth for Reform. Now, moving on. If you're in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There will actually be some hazardous weather across parts of southern Europe through the next few days, with a strong Mistral wind developing over southern France and into Corsica, leading gusts here of around 70 miles per hour and some hefty showers with that as well. Further east, and we have some heavy thunderstorms pushing across parts of Greece and into Turkey, and here we could see rainfall totals building up to around 200 millimetres. Elsewhere, there will be some fine weather around, with temperatures near or a little bit below average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Now, coming up, the Defence Secretary has opened the door to British troops being sent to Ukraine to help train the country's soldiers. Is it really wise to send our already shrinking armed forces over there and £250 million on top, when Donald Trump can have this war dealt with, perhaps, inside the next month? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joining me now is food historian and author of Christmas with Dickens, Ben Vogler. Pen, let's start with Christmas Carol. Did A Christmas Carol change Britain's view of Christmas?
I think it did, enormously. Before then, people were beginning to think, as they do now, that Christmas might be being a little bit commercial. It was too much food and drink, not enough kind of seriousness or not enough kind of love and family. And what Dickens did with A Christmas Carol was show people who were coming to the cities, who were kind of losing their rural history, a new way of celebrating Christmas, that a real, just a family could get together and love and kind of get around the table together. And whereas before, a lot of those kind of Christmas dishes would have been seasonal, lots of people would have eaten them at different times of the year, Dickens does two things. He takes the goose, which is what the Cratchits are going to eat, and he turns it to a turkey, much bigger, meatier, kind of more generous. And then he takes this thing that he never calls Christmas pudding in A Christmas Carol. There's no Christmas pudding. He only calls it plum pudding, and he anchors it to that day. And interestingly, after then, people start publishing recipes for Christmas pudding, and it starts getting its name, Christmas pudding, from plum pudding. And I think all of that really comes from A Christmas Carol.
You say becomes a Christmas pudding almost immediately after A Christmas Carol is published.
Yes, I mean, it's occasionally called Christmas pudding before, but not often. And then a very famous for the time, the kind of Delia Smith of her day, lady called Eliza Acton, publishes a recipe called The Author's Christmas Pudding in 1845. And we know she's a big Dickens fan because she sent a copy of her cookbook to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, we've got some live pictures, I think, on the screen there of Sir Keir Starmer is currently being lightly grilled at the liaison committee there on topics potentially of the WASPy scandal, the pensions, winter pensions back down, and the farmers' U-turn being questioned about the state of the economy. It's worth pointing out that half the committee are Labour MPs or ministers, so you won't get too much of a grilling from them. And it's also worth pointing out that the phrase black hole, £22 billion black hole, was mentioned twice in the first 5 minutes, fixing the foundation 3 times, working people 3 times. He was asked about the state of the economy and was it a wise thing to increase the national insurance burden on employers at the same time as hiking minimum wages, which has seen inflation soar. And he was, as you could imagine, biding a bit of time. Are these things really worth the paper they're written on, do you think? Is it just performative? This is meant to be him facing the music, but it seems to me to be a bit of a pantomime. Call me a cynic, but I don't think there'll be any real consequence from this. It's meant to be him getting a Christmas roasting. I spoke to Kevin Schofield, the political editor at the HuffPost earlier. How do you think Keir Starmer has fared in his first 5 months as Prime Minister? He gave him a 5 out of 10. Now, moving on, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that his forces are moving towards achieving their primary goals on the battlefield in Ukraine and are taking control of significant territory every day. Speaking at his annual news conference and phone-in with the public, President Putin also made a bizarre challenge to the US to take part in a missile duel to test the capabilities of Russia's new hypersonic ballistic missiles. Well, why don't we quickly go now to our home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, tell us about about this bizarre speech from Putin where people could phone in.
Yeah, well, this is one of these hybrid events, which is a combination of a press conference, a live studio audience and a phone-in. So you can get, you know, Helga calling from Vladivostok about her leaky roof, as bizarre as that. And they'll take calls like that during this mammoth 4.5-hour event that is hosted by Vladimir Putin each year. But of course, everyone wanted to know about the main event that everyone is focused on, both domestically in Russia and around the world, and that was Ukraine and how that war was going, in the opinion of the Russian president. And he said that they were very close to achieving the primary goals set out at the start of this special operation, as it's been dubbed by the Russian president. As far as he's concerned, he said, we're not just gaining hundreds of metres of territory on a regular basis, but we're measuring it in the kilometres. And he said that they are ready to sit down and hold peace talks with Volodymyr Zelensky, but it will be on their terms.
OK, all took for the new year. Thank you very much, Mark White. And coming up, we'll be getting all the latest as the Prime Minister faces his Christmas grilling. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now's your weather with Honor Krizik.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into this evening, we'll see showers die away, leaving plenty of dry spells overnight. Staying fairly cold, though, with some rain arriving later from the northwest. And the reason it's felt a lot chillier this afternoon is because we've got a cold northerly flow of air which is stretching across the country. Plenty of isobars on the chart too, which is adding on to that brisk northwesterly flow of air too. But largely, as we head into this evening, there'll be plenty of clear skies as we see those showers die away. Too breezy for a widespread frost, though we may see some pockets around sheltered rural areas. And then by the time we reach dawn, we'll see some outbreaks of rain just start to clip western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland too. And it will start to turn quite blustery here too by the time we reach Friday morning. Then through the course of Friday, we'll continue to see these outbreaks of rain slowly edge their way southeastwards. Looking at the brighter colours, we can see that rain is going to be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly as it starts to move its way into western coasts, similar towards western parts of Northern Ireland too. This rain could be quite heavy at times. Largely dry elsewhere, though we can't rule out a few showers across Wales and parts of southwest England. And there will still be plenty of dry weather around on Friday, away from this area of rain, which will continue to gradually move its way southeastwards, and this still once again heavy and persistent at times. But to the far north of this, it will turn clearer, though still once again fairly blustery showers moving in around coasts. These could be heavy with some hail at times, may even see some snow across some hilly areas. Temperatures up by a degree or two, but still feeling fairly chilly in those brisk northwesterly winds. Then through the course of the evening, we'll eventually say goodbye to that area of cloud and rain as it moves its way towards the southwest. Clearer behind, though we will gradually see some more outbreaks of rain move their way in from the northwest. And fairly unsettled over the weekend with some strong winds at times, so do stay up to date with our warnings. Bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Cheshire, the northbound M6, just between the Croft interchange and Newton Llewellyn, so junction 21A, making your way up towards junction 22. There's a breakdown there blocking a lane. Leicestershire and queuing traffic building on the southbound M1. Now, from junction 22, that's Colville through towards the Leicester Forest East services. Traffic all being held at the scene of a collision. Annis building, looking at the live cameras. A few issues on the M25 this afternoon. Currently clockwise, partially blocked and obstruction just by Heathrow at 14, causing delays. You can't get by though. Long queues clockwise too in the roadworks, South Mims to Potters Bar 23 to junction 24, and lane 204 is currently out anti-clock, Goldstone at 6 to the M26 at 5 in the roadworks. There's a breakdown.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you, and it's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. Of course, we're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, Keir Starmer is currently getting a Christmas roasting. As you can see there, live pictures on your screens from Westminster as the embattled Prime Minister faces the liaison committee for the first time as Premier. Now, with storm clouds gathering on his betrayal of the WASPy women, farmers and pensioners, will the PM have a nightmare before Christmas and get a good old stuffing? And the Electoral Commission is vowing to strengthen the rules on foreign donations as panic spreads that Elon Musk's millions could rocket boost reform. Is the Electoral Commission being weaponised by Labour to help keep Nigel Farage out of power? And Cynthia Erivo, the black British actress and star of the new Wicked movie, has blasted her critics, saying, "I am not a woke hire." But amid a growing backlash, does diversity and inclusivity in movies, on TV, and indeed in advertising basically mean let's have fewer white people? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure to have your company. It's time to kick billionaires out of politics, cried the Labour Party. Except only when it's billionaires that aren't donating to them. They didn't seem to have a problem with Lord Ali when the billionaire Lord Ali was donating to them. They didn't seem to have a problem when George Soros was pumping how much money we'll never know into the Remain campaign. They didn't seem to have a problem when a Cayman Islands-based hedge fund put £4 million into the Labour Party when Rishi Sunak called the general election. Isn't it funny how the Electoral Commission suddenly have a problem with foreign money coming in when it's Elon Musk offering money potentially towards the Reform Party? The Electoral Commission, remember, the same Electoral Commission that raided the offices of the Brexit Party during a live electoral cycle in 2019. Is the Electoral Commission truly politically neutral? Do we really have a problem with billions of pounds being put into British politics from foreigners? Or is it only a problem when the money goes in the direction that affects the cosy status quo? Get into it the usual ways, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now, here's your headlines, and it's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 4. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer is facing questions from senior MPs and government departments at the liaison committee this afternoon.
The questioning has so far focused on the state of the UK economy and has now moved on to discuss potential trade deals for the country, house building targets and the need for a ceasefire in Gaza. The committee comes as the Guardian newspaper reported last night that up to 100 Labour MPs could vote against the government's decision to refuse a payout for the WASPy women. And it's also been reported that Sir Keir Starmer will appoint around 30 new Labour peers today. Sue Gray, Sir Keir's former Downing Street Chief of Staff, and former Labour MPs are tipped to be on the list. As you've been hearing this afternoon, 26-year-old Kyle Clifford has pleaded not guilty to the murders of Carol, Hannah and Louise Hunt at their family home in Bushey in July. That not guilty plea comes after Cambridge Crown Court also heard a short time ago that Clifford has been further charged with rape. The 26-year-old is accused of fatally shooting Louise and Hannah Hunt with a crossbow and stabbing Carol Hunt to death at their home in Hertfordshire. A trial has now been set for March. Elsewhere, the Bank of England has held interest rates at 4.75% as it warned about heightened uncertainty in the economy following the budget here at home and the election in the US. The Monetary Policy Committee said it was keeping rates unchanged earlier this afternoon after cutting the level in August and again in November. Governor Andrew Bailey said the central bank needs to make sure inflation returns to its 2% target level on a sustained basis. Water bills in England and Wales are to rise by an average of 36% over the next 5 years, water regulator Ofwat has announced today. That's the equivalent of an extra £31 a year. The regulator said the increase would pay for a £104 billion upgrade of the water sector to deliver substantial lasting improvements for customers and the environment. Ofwat is already facing backlash, with Liberal Democrat environment spokesman Tim Farron describing the regulator as toothless and defunct. It comes as around 58,000 homes in Hampshire are without water today due to a technical issue, according to Southern Water. The response to that incident is being coordinated by the government. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds spoke about the increase earlier on.
Look, I think everyone recognises this is another absolutely dreadful inheritance the new government has, and the changes that have been announced, the work that the Department of the Environment have been able to do on this, means that we will tackle the horrendous problem of sewage in our waterways, that we will have a more efficient system, will deliver the level of investment that is required, and will make sure money is no longer leached out of the system by way of bonuses and dividends when a good service that the public deserve is not being provided. So it's a set of changes that deliver that long-term investment that will make sure these problems, which the British public are rightly angry about, will not happen again.
To France, where Giselle Pellicot has said she never regretted the decision to make her trial public and that she respects the court's decision after her ex-husband was sentenced to 20 years in jail. 72-year-old Dominique Pellicot has been found guilty today of raping, drugging and inviting other men to rape his ex-wife Giselle. His lawyer says that he is now considering lodging an appeal. The French court in Avignon found 47 men guilty of rape, 2 guilty of attempted rape and 2 guilty of sexual assault. Those men have now all been sentenced and the defendants have 10 days to appeal. The Pellicot case made headlines after Giselle waived her right to anonymity, saying she wanted to make shame swap sides from the victim to the rapist. The government has announced today a £100 million boost for adult and children's hospices, the biggest funding boost in a generation. Children and young people's hospices will receive a £26 million investment. The government hopes that the money will go towards delivering the highest quality end-of-life care possible for patients and their families. Health Secretary Wes Streeting spoke about the announcement earlier on.
Today we're announcing 2 things which are great news for hospices ahead of Christmas. The £100 million we're announcing over this year and next will help hospices to invest in not just the buildings but the equipment and the kit that they need to provide modern support for people, not just in hospice buildings like this but also the increasing range of hospice at home services. So it's going to make a real difference for people. And for children's hospices in particular, which are really close to my heart, we're announcing £26 million. That's an increase in previous grant funding that's been available to provide a wider range of services to a wider range of children and young people.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Martin.
Superb stuff. Now let's get stuck into this hour. Sir Keir Starmer is getting a Christmas roasting today as the embattled Prime Minister faces the parliamentary committee chairs for the first time as Premier in Parliament. Now, with storm clouds gathering on multiple fronts, including Sir Keir Starmer's betrayal of the WASPy women, farmers and pensioners, is the Labour leader having a nightmare before Christmas? Has he had a good old stuffing today? And meanwhile, the Electoral Commission is vowing to strengthen the rules on foreign donations as panic spreads that the world's richest man, Elon Musk, could rocket boost reform into a significant position of power with his endless millions. But there are question marks over whether the Electoral Commission could be being weaponised by Labour to help keep Nigel Farage out of power. To discuss all of this and more, I'm joined in the studio by GB News' political editor Chris Hope and the Conservative MP and Shadow Minister for Defence Mark Francois. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. Chris, let's start with you. So, am I being a cynic when I say these liaison committees, particularly now, just seems like pantomime at Christmas? Does anything come out of them? Half the people on this committee are on Sir Keir Starmer's side. They work for him.
Well, issues are emerging. All these different chair people on this group are paid about £15,000 a year to be in charge of these committees. Their duty is to Parliament. They grill the PM on their policy areas, whether it's foreign affairs or international development. Their duty is to Parliament, not to the party. But you are right, you are old cynic, Martin Daubney. You know it's Christmas. Half of them are Labour MPs, or more than half are Labour MPs, and they're not going to be too tough on the Prime Minister. But there is some wrinkles in there. Emily Thornberry, I saw sitting there. She's a Foreign Affairs Select Committee chairman. She, of course, was not included in the new government and was quite cross about it. So she may have some tasty words for Sir Keir Starmer. Looking at the updates here from what's been happening in the past hour, he has warned Donald Trump against imposing tariffs on the UK. He's alive to the danger of tariffs, he says.
Not a Trump quaking in his boots.
Well,
a warning from Sir Keir Starmer. A nightmare at Christmas.
You can hear Mark Francois gagging on his Christmas turkey in the studio there. No, well, he's warning against it. He had a spoken course to Trump last night, and a big issue is going to be which way does the PM go in the new year, towards the European Union as part of the Brexit talks or towards Trump. Big issue. Also some developments on planning. They are concerned about the issue of environmental measures holding back the target to hit 1.5 million new homes. That's a measure we could see more of in the future. So we're getting developments slowly, and I'll bring to you as soon as we get them.
OK, let's move on to the Electoral Commission. Now, I well remember when the Brexit Party office was raided by the Electoral Commission in 2019 after Gordon Brown, not saying the two events were connected, after Gordon Brown intimated there was foreign money that time from Russia pouring into the Brexit Party. Isn't it funny how the Electoral Commission never seemed to get involved when billionaires donate to the Labour Party? Isn't it funny how they never got involved when George Soros pumped how knows much money into the Remain campaign? They didn't seem to get involved when a £4 million donation from a Cayman Island registered hedge fund went into the Labour Party when Rishi Sunak called the election. Does it feel like the Electoral Commission is meant to be politically neutral? Does it feel like it's being weaponised to try and keep insurgent parties like Reform out of power?
I don't think it's entirely true. I think that the figures, I mean, all the things you talked about happened and they were allowed under the current rules. I think the scale of the possible investment donation, whatever it might be, to Reform UK as a company, of course, so it could be seen as an investment, by Elon Musk is causing alarm. $100 million, £78 million is a lot of money. I mean, the biggest donation so far we know that's been delivered to the Reform UK party is £250,000 by Azir Youssef, the party chairman. You know, even £1 million from, as we are assured, is coming from Nick Candy. That's 4 times the record. The figures you're describing are nowhere near the transformative figure that we're looking at from Elon Musk if that happens. We hear from the government this morning that work has started on measures to try and deal with foreign influence in our politics. It's being run by Angela Rayner's department, the MHCLG department, the Housing Communities department. We'll see where that goes to, but nothing planned before the next King's speech. There's a window of opportunity here for Elon Musk to give money into politics through X in the UK, possibly. Again, the idea from the Electoral Commission, one idea is that any size of donation is linked to the UK profits of the business, in which case for Twitter, that'd be 8.5 million quid, which wouldn't be a lot of money compared to the $100 million mooted in some reporting.
OK, Mark Francois, let's bring you in now. Loads to get stuck into there. And I know you've been speaking in Chamber today on Ukraine, but could I ask you, let's go back to this liaison committee. You've obviously been part of these, you know these inside out. They don't really do much, do they? It's a bit of a performance, it's a bit of pantomime. It looks like they're grilling Starmer, but really, does anything come out of these things? And more to the point, in the last 5 months since Keir Starmer got into power, it's the end of year, let's have a bit of fun. What would you give the Prime Minister marks out of 10?
Well, it would be a lot nearer 0 than it would 10. On the liaison committee, look, the chairman of that is now Meg Hillier. She was the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, so I served under her on the PAC for 2.5 years. Meg Hillier, I'm here to tell you, is not a patsy for anybody. I think right at the beginning, Starmer tried to come out with this 22 billion black hole. She said, look, we've had all that, you know, and then straight away moved on. So I think Meg will do it without fear or favour. And there is a purpose to it, and it's Parliament, as Chopper says, holding the Prime Minister to account. And the PM does 30 minutes on a Wednesday, but he's very poor at answering questions. This is an ability for select committee chairmen to go at him time and time again. So I do actually think there's a point to the process, and I do think in Meg Hillier we've got a very robust and worthwhile chairman, if I'm honest.
But we do get...
Even though she's Labour MP.
But we do get the same old sound bites. I mean, there must be people in the Amazonian rainforest that know Sir Keir Starmer's dad was a toolmaker. There must be undiscovered tribes that know we've got a £22 billion black hole. I digress. It just seems like an opportunity to bang out the same old sound bites and dodge the issues. Moving on.
Well, if any of those Amazonian women are waspy women, they're going to be very angry with him.
They won't be entitled to a pension. Let's talk about Musk's potential millions and the Electoral Commission getting involved. Do you have concerns about foreign money, or has that ship sailed? Is it already happening?
Well, I mean, Reform are talking this up. I mean, it's not absolutely apparent that whether or not Mr Musk has promised this money or not. And one of your colleagues asked me a few days ago, is he really going to pay this money? And I said, well, to be fair, you've got to ask him. I mean, he is the richest man in the world. He could probably afford the plane ticket. Yeah. So we don't yet know whether this is really going to happen or not. I mean, I would just make one observation, which is Barack Obama came over during the 2016 EU referendum. As an American president, and basically, when he famously said, get to the back of the queue if you don't vote to remain, you won't get a trade deal. And that intervention in British politics went down really badly because British voters didn't like the idea of an American president telling them how to vote. If anything, Obama did those of us on the Leave side a favour. So I just wonder whether there's any precedent there, if you see what I mean. So let's see how all of this actually plays out, is my instinct.
OK, now let's move on to a topic you have a huge amount of passion for. That is Ukraine. I know you've spoken today in Chamber, and of course this comes off the back of, appears to be, an extra £250 million being offered to Ukraine, and the threat, potentially, of British boots going on the ground there to help train Ukrainian troops. What are your thoughts on the current situation?
Well, we've been training the Ukrainians since 2014. Something that people sometimes forget is when we talk about the Russian invasion of 2022, that was the re-invasion. They actually invaded in 2014. That's when they took the Crimea and part of the Donbass. And then they went for the whole thing in 2022 when they tried to take Kyiv. And it was those British NLAWs, those 21st century bazookas that we trained the Ukrainians how to use that helped to stop them. We can be very proud of that. So we're talking today about more training. It's not clear whether or not any of that will now take place in Ukraine. But I made the point in the Commons that relative to the size of our army, we have given more military equipment to Ukraine than anyone else in NATO, including the United States. We've really helped to keep the Ukrainians in the game. There's one other thing that cropped up today which is important. There are emerging intelligence reports that the Russians may, and I use the word conditionally, have now begun to use chemical weapons in Ukraine.
Wow.
There's talk of them using some kind of blister agent, a bit like mustard gas in the First World War. Now, I asked the minister if he could confirm that. he didn't want to give a definitive answer because this is still being looked at. But if, and I say again if, it turns out that the Russians, as well as bringing in the North Koreans, have now resorted to chemical weapons in Ukraine, that is an escalation by Russia. And we should, if it's true, we should call them out for it.
Chris?
Do you worry, Mark, about the increased UK involvement on the ground in Ukraine? We're told by Number 10 this morning that there are some UK troops in Ukraine now training defence medical personnel, a small contingent protecting diplomats. It's going towards a peace deal, maybe in February, if Trump delivers on his promise to end the war on day one of his presidency. Do you worry, though, that we need to have a bit of a conversation, a vote in Parliament even, about the escalation of the UK being more involved on the ground in the new year?
I don't think you would have to have a vote in Parliament if, for instance, we had some people providing diplomatic protection for our diplomats. I don't really think
it seems to be growing, though. That's why I asked the question.
Well, we all wait to see what President-elect Trump is going to do. The risk is that if they were to freeze the conflict as it is along the current lines, and there's some talk of that, what Putin would do is he'd say, all right, I've now got the Crimea, I've got the Donbass and lots of the industrial assets and resources that come with it. I stopped Ukraine joining NATO, I won. There's the risk. So I think that there is a lot for President-elect Trump to weigh up. All I will say is, I think we all know, he does have a reputation for surprising people. So for us all to sit here and try and pretend that we know exactly what President-elect Trump is going to do on past experience might be a mistake.
OK, Mark, can I also ask you, yesterday, I believe, Priti Patel asked an urgent question on the topic of the Chagos Islands.
Yes.
You've got some news for us on that.
Yeah, the Chagos chaos continues, Martin. And the government seemed to keep changing their mind, and they had a bit of an embarrassment in the last 24, 48 hours when they said in a parliamentary reply to me that the new Mauritian Prime Minister had agreed to move towards a conclusion of the negotiations. And almost within the hour, Bloomberg reported that the Mauritian Prime Minister had said he wanted to reopen the negotiations. So call me old-fashioned, but you don't normally conclude a negotiation by reopening it. So basically, the government are all over the place. And constitutionally, I think perhaps one of the reasons the Speaker granted the UK, ultimately it's down to him, is it looks like Mauritian MPs are being told more about what's going on than British MPs, and that's completely unacceptable.
And Chris Hope, you've got actually an extra piece of information for us here about the potential negotiation with Mauritius, right?
Well, the big concern is what is the renegotiation happening? We thought the deal had been done. Again, you aren't happy about that. A 100-year lease on Diego Garcia. Reporting in Mauritius this week, in fact yesterday or the day before that they could an idea could be, again not confirmed by the Mauritius government, to reduce the lease on Diego Garcia for the US and UK to use it from 100 years to 40 years. Again,
40 years.
40 years. I mean, that is a blink of an eye in world diplomacy. Again, not confirmed, but we don't know the detail because you're not being told it, and you're the MPs in charge of this kind of thing. How do you react to that?
Well, it's immensely frustrating. You know, we're there on behalf of the British people to hold the government to account, right? Since we first heard of this, and remember, it was announced outside of the Commons to coincide with the Mauritian elections, and the Speaker quite rightly went bananas and said, I'm not worried about Mauritian MPs, I'm worried about UK MPs.
Didn't affect the thing, did it? It's still announced.
But since that day, we have been repeatedly bombarding the government with questions, and they absolutely refuse to give any details. They won't tell us exactly what the terms of the agreement are. They won't tell us what it costs. They won't tell us what budget it comes out of. They won't tell us whether or not the fact that Mauritius is signed up to a Pan-African non-nuclear proliferation treaty would interfere with the ability to have nuclear weapons at Diego, which is part of the West's overall deterrence stance. And there was a moment of near farce in the Commons because when the UQ started, it was just after Prime Minister's questions, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, got up and scuttled out of the chamber. And he left poor Stephen Doughty, his junior minister, to answer. And at one point, Stephen Doughty said, I want to be absolutely clear and then continue not to answer a single question.
I should say, that's your government did that. Your government didn't face up to the UQs with the top person. They sent a junior person in. You know that's politics.
Chopper, I was there yesterday, and the point is, Stephen Doughty kept saying, I want to be clear, and in the end, the House of Commons were just laughing.
That's what your government did. They all do it.
Gentlemen, have to call time. You can carry this one on in the Westminster Arms afterwards. Thank you very much, Mark, Francois and Chris Hope. Always an absolute pleasure, and Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Thank you, Dom.
Now it's time for our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway here on GB News this year, and your chance to win £50,000 in tax-free cash. I'm afraid it's not $100 million, but it might help you out, and it's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away, and it could be yours. Here are the details that you need to win a whopping 50 grand in tax-free cashola.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, and coming up, a shocking new report has claimed that over 100,000 marriages fall under Sharia law in Britain, with brides having to pay 5-figure sums to attempt to buy their way out of them. And it begs the question, why is Sharia law not illegal in the UK? That's next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's News Channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
I'm joined with Ryan Mark Parsons, who's a TV personality, a columnist, and he was on The Apprentice a few years back, weren't you? That's where most people would recognise your face from. One of the youngest contenders ever on The Apprentice. How did that work out?
Well, you know what? I never in a million years thought I'd get on the show. I was 18 when I applied. There were about 6 months of auditions. It was intense. You met Lord Sugar's advisors, his lawyers, his business advisors. It was the most intense thing I've ever done. And I just thought, never in a million years am I going to get on the show as a teenager. And I got the call from the exec, and he was like, you're one of the 16 candidates. And it was just like, really? So I took a gap year. I've just finished my A-levels. I was working in Harrods before. And I just came up with this business idea, took it onto the show, and I got fired in the end. I lasted 8 weeks, which wasn't too bad. But
what was the business idea? Educate me.
A concierge, similar to companies like Velocity Black, quintessentially, that work with some of the private banks. It was similar to that. I was inspired by my time in Harrods, working with some of these ultra high net worth clients. So I just wrote a 40-page business plan like we all have to do. But I didn't make it to the interview, so I didn't get to talk about it. But no, it was a great experience, a very tough experience, but unforgettable.
So at a young age, how did that change your life at that age? Because you must have got recognised, starting to be recognised when you're going out and about town.
Yeah, I mean, it happened quite quickly because the adverts start rolling out on BBC One, and then the shows go on air. It's once a week on a Wednesday. You're getting about 7 million people tuning in every week.
Yep.
And yeah, it was surreal. It was surreal. And then suddenly you get invitations to things. You're going to premieres, and it was a lot. It was a lot at a young age, and I obviously had no training for any of that. But I just embraced it, and I've had fun with it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:28 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, please tune in later on for Nigel Farage live on GB News. There he is, look, in his Santa hat, looking resplendent. 7 p.m. this evening on GB News for Nigel Farage's Christmas special, where I'll be joined by an audience of 400 people, live and direct from Kent. That's 7 p.m. tonight. Farage Christmas special, only here on GB News. Now, brace yourselves for some breaking news. This is going to warm your cockles because the anti-Starmer parody song, Freezing This Christmas, has hit #1 in the official singles downloads chart. Let's have a reminder of this beautiful little song.
It'll be freezing this Christmas while Keir Starmer's warm.
Now, who'd have thought Chris Middleton, the creator of that song, all proceeds from that song go to helping cold pensioners this winter. It is a charity song with a message. In fact, a message that they won't even say. They won't even mention the name of the artist, which, by the way, is Sir Starmer and the Granny Harmers. It's now #1 on the global charts. It was #1 on iTunes, and it's just emerged. It is now officially the singles download chart #1. Does that mean it's the Christmas #1? If so, it's going to be incredibly embarrassing for the Prime Minister. Will the BBC play it? Will they do what they did with the Sex Pistols in 1977? God Save the Queen. They'll airbrush it from history. They'll try and pretend it doesn't exist. Chris Middleton, raise a glass. #1 for that song, Freezing This Christmas, in the official singles downloads chart. Now, moving on now, because Britain has emerged as a so-called Western capital of the world for Sharia courts, with 85 of them now operating throughout the UK. And these Islamic councils, which are becoming increasingly influential, typically consist of panels of Islamic scholars who issue religious rulings on matters such as marriages and of divorces. But are they compatible with British values? And should they even be allowed in our country? Well, I'm joined now in the studio by the former Special Advisor, James Price. James, welcome to the studio. It's an incredible state of affairs. 100,000 marriages in Britain carried out under Sharia law, the Western capital, 85 open courts throughout the UK. We have a rule of law in Britain. It's called British law. My question to you is simple. Do Sharia courts undermine the principle of one law for all?
I think they absolutely do. This is staggering to really think about this. You know, the idea is that everybody gets to live under one set of rules, as you say, including even the king himself, right? The idea is that the king is not able to go around and do whatever he wants. That's the case in these islands for a very long time. You could think about things like Magna Carta. That put restrictions even on the monarch himself, and we all lived under one set of rules that were fair, that were reasonable. They applied the same to everybody else, and that allows you to live your life in decent peace. Literally, it was called the King's Peace. And that's a very, very important principle. We've exported it successfully around the world, places like the United States, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, you name it. The British legal system is respected the world over, and yet it seems to be that we have allowed to grow and fester in this country a separate legal system. Even if it was a great legal system, that would be concerning. I think there are many, many reasons to think that it's not a great legal system.
And so for balance, why would it be acceptable for Sharia law courts to even exist in Britain in the first place? What's the principle behind them?
So I think there's an argument that could be made that says, look, as long as both parties agree to this, you could treat this like mediation. You know, when couples are thinking about maybe getting divorced, they go to a kind of secular mediator and they say, you know, was it really as bad as all that he didn't, you know, put his dirty laundry away or whatever it may be? And both sides kind of agree that they'll try that process. Now, if they're both religious people, in this case, if they're both Muslims, or you could have it as well, because we do have in the UK Sikh courts as well. I think there must be Hindu ones too. People might go to their vicar as well and do these things. As long as both sides are perfectly consenting, you might think that this isn't actually a separate legal code. This is just two people kind of trying to work things out based on a shared set of principles. I think there are a lot of reasons why that's not valid in this case.
The problem with that is that we don't have equality in this system. This investigation today makes the allegations, very, very concerning allegations, that five-figure sums of money are having to be paid by women to get out of divorces, which directly goes to the husband. And the Sharia courts, beg your pardon, are ran by Islamic scholars who are almost always male. This is the men, it's the patriarchy. It's a scheme, it's a system that oppresses women. They're having to buy their way out of it. And that begs a very, very simple question. How on earth is this legal in Britain?
It's wild, isn't it, that you have so much of the time you hear about how evil and horrible men are, you hear about the patriarchy, you hear all these sorts of woke stories about these things, and yet you have a whole set of people who believe that it's right and proper at, say, religious venues, that men can walk into the front door and women have to go and use the back door. And there's all kinds of, theological scholarship that says that women have kind of deficient minds, and that those are some of the things that can be taught in these sorts of places. I don't think you and I think that. Nobody at home thinks that. And yet these are some of the principles that go along. And that in these not legal marriages, but marriages as they're often called, men are able to just divorce the woman just by saying the word a few times. And as you say, it's a different rule for women. And of course, it's got so bad now that there's actually an app that you can download, as the Times was reporting this. And in this app, with helping you work out your way through all this Sharia law, that a man can put how many wives he has, up to 4. Well, that's a crime in the United Kingdom.
It's illegal to have more than one wife.
But they'll say, well, it's not actually illegal. It's not legal marriage. It's just, we're just all agreeing it amongst ourselves, which is absolutely wild when you think about it. And what does that do for the kind of social cohesion of the United Kingdom? We've seen huge numbers of people joining the country in the last 25 years or so, even in the last couple of years, huge numbers of people coming. And we know that that's causing cultural, social tensions. Even if all these people coming over were wonderful, brilliant people, they were the next Shakespeare, which they may well be, we don't know. If you've got people from very different cultures, clearly ideas that you could have more than one wife, for example, something that's never really been allowed in this country, certainly go back 1,000 years at least, that's going to cause various kinds of social difficulties. What happens when you want to leave some money in your will? We've seen Rupert Murdoch, one of the richest men in the world. He's been trying to change his will over in America to allow one of his kids to inherit more than the others and things like that. Not able to do that in the United States. Very, very difficult to do things like that here. And yet we have this whole parallel system, and people who are involved in this will pay more attention and hold these Sharia rules as a higher law of the land than the actual law of the land. And I think the worst thing about it, of course, is this imbalance, as you say, between men and women. You may go into these things and they'll say, oh, no, we're all fine, we all agree with this. Do you really believe that's the case? Do people really believe that the women in this are actually consenting in this? It's very hard to get an honest answer when there are social pressures involved.
And I wonder if there'll be any appetite to tackle this at all. I suspect not. James Price, thank you very much for joining us here on GB News. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you. Now, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country, and each day they have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season. Here's today's.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 19.
Christmas points to hope, whether it's the twinkling lights on a tree, which means light in darkness. Perhaps if we're honest, we're hoping for a better year ahead, or just something that helps us make sense of life's twists and turns. In the Bible passage, there's a phrase that speaks of the root of Jesse, a sign among the peoples, a sign that points to hope and the possibility of change for everyone. It's the Bible's way of saying that something bigger than ourselves is at work in the world. Jesus, born at Christmas, was that sign, a symbol of peace, hope, which means the possibility of a fresh start. Sometimes we look for signs in the big moments, the loud events, or the extraordinary. But Christmas reminds us that the most powerful signs can be found in the quiet, humble beginnings, like a baby born in a manger. As we celebrate this season, maybe the real sign we're all waiting for is a reminder that hope can appear when we least expect it, in the places we might not look. So let's keep our eyes open for the signs of hope, peace, and joy in Jesus Christ this Christmas. wish you a very happy Christmas.
You know, I just think those things are absolutely magnificent. I genuinely do. And you can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by going to gbnews.com/Advent. And a very, very Merry Christmas to you all out there. Now, there's more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including Cynthia Erivo, the black British actress and the star of the new Wicked movie, where she's blasted her critics saying, "I'm not a woke hire." We'll get more reaction to this after the break. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into this evening, we'll see showers die away, leaving plenty of dry spells overnight. Staying fairly cold, though, with some rain arriving later from the northwest. And the reason it's felt a lot chillier this afternoon is because we've got a cold northerly flow of air which is stretching across the country. Plenty of isobars on the chart too, which is adding on to that brisk northwesterly flow of air too. But largely as we head into this evening, there'll be plenty of clear skies as we see those showers die away. Too breezy for a widespread frost, though we may see some pockets around sheltered rural areas. And then by the time we reach dawn, we'll see some outbreaks of rain just start to clip western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland too. And it will start to turn quite blustery here too by the time we reach Friday morning. Then through the course of Friday, we'll continue to see these outbreaks of rain slowly edge their way southeastwards. Looking at the brighter colours, we can see that rain is going to be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly as it starts to move its way into western coasts, similar towards western parts of Northern Ireland too. This rain could be quite heavy at times. Largely dry elsewhere, though we can't rule out a few showers across Wales and parts of southwest England. And there will still be plenty of dry weather around on Friday, away from this area of rain, which will continue to gradually move its way southeastwards, and this still once again heavy and persistent at times. But to the far north of this, it will turn clearer, though still once again fairly blustery showers moving in around coasts. These could be heavy with some hail at times, may even see some snow across some hilly areas. Temperatures up by a degree or two, but still feeling fairly chilly in those brisk northwesterly winds. Then through the course of the evening, we'll eventually say goodbye to that area of cloud and rain as it moves its way towards the southwest. Clearer behind, though we will gradually see some more outbreaks of rain move their way in from the northwest. And fairly unsettled over the weekend with some strong winds at times, so do stay up to date with our warnings. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. There's congestion towards Glasgow, the southwest M80 at the turn for Cumbernauld Lowood Junction. That's junction 5, down towards the M73 at 4. There's a collision there being dealt with, a slow going, and it's partially blocked. Cheshire, northbound M6, the Croft interchange. So that's junction 21A from the M62 up to Newton Le Willows at 22. A breakdown there blocking a lane. Slow southbound M1 just from 22 Colville down towards the Leicester Forest East services. An earlier collision there still causing some delays, although it's starting to improve. Queuing anti-clock following the earlier breakdown on the M25. It's in the roadwork, still slow. Godstone at 6 to junction 5, and the northbound M23 a lane closed on the entry slip at Crawley at 10. A breakdown there causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:41 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, a British teenager who has been jailed in Dubai over a holiday romance was cleared of rape, but he still faces a 1 year in jail in what has been described as a hellhole prison because his accuser was 2 weeks shy of her 18th birthday. Marcus Fakana of North London was out with his parents in Dubai in August when a holiday romance blossomed with another Londoner who has since turned 18. And we can now speak with David Hay, the lawyer representing Marcus. David, welcome to the show. This story rumbles on. I wanted to speak to you today because fresh information has emerged. So Marcus has been cleared of that rape. CCTV footage showed that the young woman in question entered into his hotel room willingly, and yet you gave me information earlier on that they are still pushing for harsh sentencing in Dubai. Tell us more.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Marcus. Sorry, Martin, and thank you for highlighting this case as you have done many others suffering injustices in Dubai. I mean, this is just really is a tragedy, and Marcus obviously is still in Dubai and has been given a 1-year sentence. But at the present time, is the concern amongst the family is effectively that the sentence could be increased up to 20 years. And that's a shocking worry. And so lots of, it's basically kind of lives on hold, treading water at the moment with the Damocles sword over their head. The government, Keir Starmer, David Lammy, who is Marcus's actual local MP, as well as obviously being Foreign Secretary, effectively deserted Marcus, like they have deserted countless Brits suffering injustices in Dubai and the Middle East.
David, you told me an astonishing piece of information earlier. I had no idea of this. Can you share with GB News the notion that foreign criminals can plea bargain their sentencing down by learning the Quran?
Absolutely. I mean, we all hope that Marcus will be home for Christmas in some form of miracle. I mean, I was listening to your Christmas message earlier about hope, and that's certainly something one has to do. But one of the things over in Dubai, if Marcus is facing a 1 year or more sentence, one of the ways that he can reduce that effectively is learning the Quran, converting and memorizing the Quran. If people do that, which many Brits will spend this Christmas in Dubai jails trying to memorize the Quran so they can get home. That's a very, very different situation to what would be happening here. I know personally many Brits that are currently trying to memorize the Quran just so they can get rid of injustices in their life.
How can that be a thing? Help me to make sense of the notion that what you're plea bargaining by learning the Quran, and by the way, is there a special reward if you're a Christian, for example, and you learn the Quran? Does that count even more?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things that I experienced personally when I was locked up there 10 years ago, and when I've helped countless people since. From just converting, you will get better treatment. You will get put in a better part of the jail. You and your blockmates will get better food. That's something that the police there and the guards cover very, very seriously. But so it starts at that. Just by you saying you will convert, you get treated better. But if you memorize the Quran, you can get out of jail free effectively. And so many people are doing that. And then, it's very difficult for us to kind of imagine a scheme in England where if people were memorizing the Bible, that they would get out of jail free. It just doesn't compute.
Well, actually, what happens here is that you convert to Christianity and you get to stay on indefinite leave at the expense of the British taxpayer. I digress. The case of Marcus Fakana carries on, please. David Hay, please keep us up to speed throughout. And as ever, looking very, very dapper. Thank you for joining us on the show. Always a pleasure, and a Merry Christmas to you. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There will actually be some hazardous weather across parts of southern Europe through the next few days, with a strong Mistral wind developing over southern France and into Corsica, leading gusts here of around 70 miles per hour and some hefty showers with that as well. Further east, and we have some heavy thunderstorms pushing across parts of Greece and into Turkey, and here we could see rainfall totals building up to around 200 millimetres. Elsewhere, there will be some fine weather around, with temperatures near or a little bit below average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Coming up, Cynthia Erivo, the black British actress and the star of the new Wicked movie, has blasted her critics, saying, "I'm not a woke hire." But amid a growing backlash, does diversity and inclusivity in movies, on television and in advertising basically mean let's have fewer white people? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Robert Walton has been jet-setting in recent weeks in Singapore for the YYY Awards and then back to London to host the inaugural Restaurant Association Awards.
Yep, and after many years in the industry, Robert also knows a thing or two about how to create the perfect Christmas. And it's all in the preparation. So we're going to be asking him about that as well. I'm delighted to say that the godfather of hospitality, Robert Walton, MBE, joins us now on the sofa.
Morning, Robert.
Robert,
Good
so
morning.
good to see you. And what a busy few weeks you have had. Yeah. Should we start with the YYY Awards? Because I think it's just wonderful who you celebrated at those awards.
So, the YYY, young chef, young waiter, young mixologist. And it's a competition that's created around the world. So people from all around the world can apply. So this year we had 9 countries, from India to the Caribbean, from the USA to Scotland and England. And so we had 27 young professionals. The average age was about 24.
Wow.
All coming to Singapore. So we flew everyone to Singapore. We create what I call the Olympic Village. We create a little village for them, and it's in a very cool spot with great bars. And then we have the competition. And this year, I can now announce, I was here just a few weeks ago before we had the competition, that the USA won, which was absolutely incredible. Thailand was second. And gorgeous Wales was third.
Yes. Well done, Wales.
Well done, Wales.
We now expect to have a good meal. There's no reason why you shouldn't have good food. The key now is the service, because there's no reason why you don't have good service. And good service is not that difficult. Smile, to start with. It really isn't that difficult. It's called hospitable. We call the industry, or the sector we look after is the hospitality industry, which is all about being hospitable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the black British actress Cynthia Erivo insists that she wasn't a woke hire when cast as the Wicked Witch of the West, Elphaba. And the Wicked star says that she had the credentials and the life experience to bring the character to life. But does this mask a greater problem of white actors being unconsidered or squeezed out for more and more starring roles, or are we just being snowflakes? We're going to now speak with the political commentator Anna McGovern. Anna, welcome to the show. You know, it struck me as, if she says, I'm not a woke hire, she probably thinks that she is a woke hire. Is there anything in this notion that these days it seems to be that if you're a white actor or a white actress, you're at the back of the queue?
It feels like that, certainly. And I think what's important here as well is that Wicked is aimed at children. And what we're seeing so much more now, whether that's in children's TV shows or in movies as well, that there's always got to be a hidden meaning, some kind of representation that needs to be put forward. And I think as well, particularly with this character, Elphaba, so the actress actually said that her experience of being a black woman actually informed the portrayal of her as Elphaba in this movie, which I personally think there's quite a lot of narcissism when you're putting a statement like that forward. She even said as well that long nails actually formed part of that black aspect of the character, which I do think is quite strange to say. But overall, we're seeing this as well with Disney as well. There was that in Snow White, there's an actress who's been cast, she's a black woman who's been cast, has actually caused a lot of uproar for that. And I think it would just be so much simpler. Keep it simple, portray it how it's meant to be told, and stop trying to put all of these hidden agendas in.
Now, Anna, it's worth pointing out that Cynthia Erivo is a fine actress. She's an absolutely excellent actress, but the fact of the matter is, this is a conversation that goes on. And you're absolutely right to point out that Rachel Zegler, who is a Snow White isn't even white. In fact, it gets worse. The dwarves aren't even dwarves. Do you know, they actually put tall people in there who were over 6 foot tall. They had a 6.5 foot tall dwarf in case they offended dwarves. And by the way, dwarves, whenever I've done this story in the past, quite like being hired. It's their special time of year. It's like you're cutting dwarves out of jobs by hiring tall people. And there was such a backlash when that was shown in early screenings, Anna. They got rid of all these multi-heighted dwarves and they got CGI dwarves back in. They got rid of the jobs for dwarves. They've absolutely lost the plot.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous. The original story is told they are dwarfs, they are short people, and there is some kind of tragic irony here that you've got tall people actually being cast as dwarfs. What is going on? I just think this woke madness has gone way too far, and this really does need to stop. They need to take a good and long, hard think with themselves.
I think you're absolutely right, and don't even get me started on advertising. I mean, when was the last time you saw a white couple on an advert? You know, they're about as rare as something I'm not allowed to say on television. Anna McGovern, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much. It's a lot of fun, but it is a serious topic, and I know it's one that gets you rattled out there in GB News Land. Anna McGovern, thank you very much, and a very, very Merry Christmas to you. Is there anything in this? But there's been a massive backlash, particularly about Snow White. You know, the trailer has now been viewed 11 million times. Only 100,000 people like it, and 1.4 million people dislike it. They just don't like the idea that a Latin American actress has been cast as Snow White. Are some things not just sacred? Now, coming up, we're getting all the latest as the Prime Minister faces his Christmas grilling. Is this serious, or is it just pantomime? And also the continued hoo-ha about Musk's millions, the Electoral Commission stepping in to try and stop it. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, British News Channel. Now, here's your weather with Arnold Krizik.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into this evening, we'll see showers die away, leaving plenty of dry spells overnight. Staying fairly cold, though, with some rain arriving later from the northwest. And the reason it's felt a lot chillier this afternoon is because we've got a cold northerly flow of air which is stretching across the country. Plenty of isobars on the chart too, which is adding on to that brisk northwesterly flow of air too. But largely as we head into this evening, there'll be plenty of clear skies as we see those showers die away. Too breezy for a widespread frost, though we may see some pockets around sheltered rural areas. And then by the time we reach dawn, we'll see some outbreaks of rain just start to clip western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland too. And it will start to turn quite blustery here too by the time we reach Friday morning. Then through the course of Friday, we'll continue to see these outbreaks of rain slowly edge their way southeastwards. Looking at the brighter colours, we can see that rain is going to be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly as it starts to move its way into western coasts, similar towards western parts of Northern Ireland too. This rain could be quite heavy at times. Largely dry elsewhere, though we can't rule out a few showers across Wales and parts of southwest England. And there will still be plenty of dry weather around on Friday, away from this area of rain, which will continue to gradually move its way southeastwards, and this still once again heavy and persistent at times. But to the far north of this, it will turn clearer, though still once again fairly blustery showers moving in around coasts. These could be heavy with some hail at times, may even see some snow across some hilly areas. Temperatures up by a degree or two, but still feeling fairly chilly in those brisk northwesterly winds. Then through the course of the evening, we'll eventually say goodbye to that area of cloud and rain as it moves its way towards the southwest. Clearer behind, though we will gradually see some more outbreaks of rain move their way in from the northwest. And fairly unsettled over the weekend with some strong winds at times, so do stay up to date with our warnings. Bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello again. I'm Jules Buckley. There's queues towards Glasgow building the southwest M80, junction 5 towards Force or towards the M73 turn-off. Now it's partially blocked, a condition causing queues back towards junction 6. And the eastbound M8 in Glasgow, around 14 for fruit markets, part blocked on the exit slip there. There's a breakdown just starting to cause delays. There's also a broken down vehicle causing queues to form on the northbound M6, the Croft interchange up to Newton Le Willow Slough, junction 21A to 22, with a lane closure in place. Queuing north for the M23 at junction 10 for Crawley. That follows an earlier breakdown that all the lanes are back open now, and there's still queues anti-clock on the M25 in the roadworks. Godstone at 6 to the M26 at 5, not up there by an earlier broken down vehicle. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. I love that festive jingle there. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, early today, the Prime Minister faces Christmas roasting from top parliamentary chairs, where he insisted that it had done nothing differently since winning power back in July's general election. But he claimed the inheritance from the Conservatives was worse than I thought in every respect. And we'll discuss his performance next. Next story, the Electoral Commission is vowing to strengthen the rules on foreign donations as panic spreads that Elon Musk's millions could rocket boost reform. But is the Electoral Commission being weaponised by Labour to help keep Nigel Farage out of power? And President-elect Donald Trump is vowing to get rid of the entire education department in America when he returns to the White House on January the 20th. But why does he want to do this and will this even be allowed? He wants to kick out the entire department in part of his war on woke. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have you coming. You know, I don't like the way the kids are being taught. I'm going to get rid of the entire department. I'm not going to try and change the curriculum. I'm going to get rid of the whole damn lot of them. Is that even possible? It's a very, very Trump thing to do. I'm talking about American politics coming to Britain. What do you make of this threat? The rattling of the sabre by the Electoral Commission to suddenly tighten the rules on foreign donations. Now, Elon Musk may give some money to Nigel Farage. Funny, they were quiet when George Soros was donating God knows how much to the Remain campaign. They were totally silent on Lord Ali's billions going to the Labour Party, and there wasn't a single sausage came out of the Electoral Commission when there was that £4 million donation to the Labour Party from a hedge fund in the Cayman Islands at the start of the last general election campaign. In 2019, in May, the Electoral Commission raided the offices of the Brexit Party. That row was about alleged Russian money. That proved to be untrue. My question to you today is very, very simple. Is the Electoral Commission, which is meant to be politically neutral, actually being weaponised to try and stop Nigel Farage getting into number 10? Get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now here's your headlines, and it's Joe Casper.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Joe Casper in the GB Newsroom. Well, as you've just been hearing, Sir Keir Starmer has insisted he would not have done anything differently if he were to start his tenure as Prime Minister again. He's been facing questions from senior MPs and government departments at the Liaison Committee this afternoon. The questioning focused on the state of the UK economy, potential trade deals for the country, house building targets, and the need for a ceasefire in Gaza. At the end, the Prime Minister was asked if he would have done anything differently, following criticism for decisions including denying WASPI women compensation, imposing new inheritance tax measures on farmers, and the cut to winter fuel payments.
No, we had to do tough stuff. We're getting on with it, and I'm very pleased to be delivering from a position of power rather than going around the division lobbies losing every night. I've had too much of that.
26-year-old Kyle Clifford has pleaded not guilty to the murders of Carol, Hannah and Louise Hunt at their family home in Bushey in July. That not guilty plea comes after Cambridge Crown Court also heard a short time ago that Clifford has been further charged with rape. The 26-year-old is accused of fatally shooting Louise and Hannah Hunt with a crossbow and stabbing Carol Hunt to death in their home in Hertfordshire. A trial has now been set for March. The Bank of England has held interest rates at 4.75% as it warned about heightened uncertainty in the economy following the budget here at home and the election in the US. The Monetary Policy Committee said it was keeping rates unchanged earlier this afternoon after cutting the level in August and again in November. Governor Andrew Bailey said the central bank needs to make sure inflation returns to its 2% target level on a sustained basis. Water bills in England and Wales are to rise by an average of 36% over the next 5 years, water regulator Ofwat announced today. That's the equivalent of an extra £31 a year. The regulator said the increase would pay for a £104 billion upgrade of the water sector to deliver substantial lasting improvements for customers and the environment. Ofwat is already facing backlash from Liberal Democrat environment spokesman Tim Farron, describing the regulator as toothless and defunct. It comes as around 58,000 homes in Hampshire are without water due to technical issues, Southern Water are saying. The response to the incident is being coordinated by the government. Well, Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds spoke about the increase earlier on.
I think everyone recognises this is another absolutely dreadful inheritance the new government has, and the changes that have been announced, the work that the Department of the Environment have been able to do on this means that we will tackle the horrendous problem of sewage in our waterways, that we will have a more efficient system, will deliver the level of investment that is required, and will make sure money is no longer leached out of the system by way of bonuses and dividends when a good service that the public deserve is not being provided. So it's a set of changes that deliver that long-term investment that will make sure these problems which the British public are rightly angry about will not happen again.
Giselle Pellico has said that she never regretted the decision to make her trial public and that she respects the court's decision after her ex-husband was sentenced to 20 years in jail. 72-year-old Dominique Pellico has been found guilty today of raping, drugging and inviting other men to rape his ex-wife Giselle. His lawyer says that he is considering lodging an appeal. The French court in Avignon found 47 men guilty of rape, 2 guilty of attempted rape and 2 guilty of sexual assault in a mass rape trial. Those men have all been sentenced and the defendants have 10 days to appeal. The Pellico case made headlines after Giselle waived her right to anonymity, saying she wanted to make shame swap sides from the victim to the rapist. Those are your latest headlines. For now, I'm Joe Casper. More from me in half an hour. Now back to Martin.
Thank you, Joe. Beautiful. Now, earlier today, the Prime Minister faced his Christmas roasting from top parliamentary chairs, where he insisted that he'd have done nothing differently since winning power back in July's general election. But he did claim that the inheritance from the Conservatives, guess what, was worse than I thought in every respect. And he also said that it would take some time for the public to feel any positive impact from any of his policies. And meanwhile, the Electoral Commission is vowing to strengthen the rules on foreign donations as panic seems to be spreading that the world's richest man, Elon Musk, could rocket boost reform into a significant position of power. But there are question marks over whether the Electoral Commission could be being weaponised by the Labour Party to help keep Nigel Farage out of power. They're meant to be politically neutral. Is that the case? Loads to get our teeth stuck into. And to do that, I'm joined in the studio now by GBNews' political editor, Chris Hope, and also the Conservative... No, I'm not joined by you. It's the political commentator, Benedict Spence, who's just been elevated to a Conservative MP. Merry Christmas, Benedict and Chris. Welcome to the studio. Let's start with you. So this Parliamentary Liaison Committee, it's meant to be the time when Sir Keir Starmer got his Christmas roasting, but is it just pantomime, or did Sir Keir Starmer get a good stuffing?
A bit of both, I think, Martin. I think this liaison committee is meant to be, or is in fact, the chairs of all the different committees in Parliament that grill parts of government. They're paid £15,000 each a pop on top of their work as MPs. Headlines so far, Keir Starmer's warned Donald Trump against imposing tariffs on the UK. The
notion that a warning from Sir Keir Starmer would rattle the loafers of Donald Trump is in itself...
We are an important part of the US, in terms of how it relates to the world and how our special relationship. He's alive to the dangers of tariffs, we're told. He's not a fan, glad to hear, of protectionist measures. Again, that's prefiguring, I think, the arrival of Trump in the White House on January the 20th, what Trump will think about the attempts by Keir Starmer to meet with EU 27 leaders on 3rd of July. Also, Ursula von der Leyen, who's the EU president. How will that go down? Will Trump step in with some intervention on Truth Social or Twitter? Other areas too, you might like this one. He was asked any regrets over the first 5 months in number 10 Downing Street. You might think of the winter fuel payment, the farmers' tax raid, payments to public sector workers, not to pensioners, the issues of sleeves and wearing glasses given to him in suits. He said he has no regrets. No, he says, we have to do tough stuff. We're getting on with it. I'm very pleased with delivering from a position of power rather than losing every week, every night in the division lobbies. And also, finally, on small boats, he claims that breaking up people smuggling gangs will be deterrent to small boat channel crossings. So I think we are seeing a change in this government. I was with them all last night, the team around Keir Starmer. They are changing from a campaigning team to one of governing. And what the difference of that is, campaigning is easy, governing is hard. I think he's getting real to that idea.
Small goats. I think we're watching a few too many nativity plays there. Chris Hope, on a serious point, the Electoral Commission is a huge topic of conversation today because, of course, they are now saying they're going to clamp down on the rules. This, of course, is in the aftershock of this sensational announcement, hasn't happened yet even, that there could potentially be $100 million of Elon Musk's, the world's richest man, going to the Reform Party. My point is very, very simple. The Electoral Commission never seemed to have a problem with foreign money when it was George Soros's money going to Remain, when Guy Verhofstadt was knocking on doors on Camden Square.
He's not a donor, he's a politician. No problem at all.
Foreign interference. No mention when £4 million was donated to the Labour Party when Rishi Sunak called the election from a Cayman Island hedge fund. Is this one rule for them and one rule for the Reform Party? They're clamping down on Nigel Farage when he could get a competitive advantage. Am I being a cynic?
you're not being cynical, but what's happening here is all those numbers you talked about, they are a few million quid here and there at the top end. What we're talking about here with Elon Musk is $100 million, 78 million English pounds.
A lot of pennies come over, yeah.
A lot of money, but that's the concern, I think. So you got this intervention here from the head of the electoral regulator, the Electoral Commission. He's saying that maybe it should be the UK companies, its profits should limit the donation given. Now, currently, there's no cap on donations at all, no plans by the UK government to stop that, and in fact, no plans to legislate at all on this. Work has started on dealing with foreign influence in our democracy, we're told by Downing Street today. Work has started by Angela Rayner's department, but as things stand, no plans in this entire parliamentary term to legislate on this. I think we're heading towards a big battle between Number 10, the government, and Elon Musk about how much he can give and not warp our democracy here to reform UK. It'll be quite an interesting first 6 months of next year.
Ben Spence, a great opportunity to bring you in here. Let's stick on this point here of foreign donations, foreign interference, and this sudden clampdown by the Electoral Commission. Call me a cynic. Are they being used, are they being rolled out to batten down the hatches when it might disfavour the status quo?
I think there is a lot in that. I think it would be less important to be raising this if it wasn't Elon Musk in particular who was raising it. If it was some other billionaire who was promising to send lots of money to reform, then maybe we might not be hearing quite so much about it. But I think Elon Musk, if we're being completely honest, is probably the second, maybe third most powerful man on Earth, played a pivotal role in the re-election of the President of the United States, will almost certainly play a pivotal role in the election of the next President of the United States as well. And I think that that's something that needs to be borne in mind, is that his attitude is no longer simply about what is in the best interests of my companies. It is how can I use my accrued wealth and power to push politics in a direction that I believe to be morally right. He's done that in the United States. He's planning on doing it in the UK, but also in Europe as well, and you can see that through his friendship with people like George Maloney. He sees this as much more a sort of a civilizational question, the direction that Western countries are going in. So I don't think simply by cracking down on how much money he can donate, he's going to go away anytime soon. I think for as long as there are political parties that align with his vision of the future, he will find ways to try to assist them. I think that, you know, this sort of snapping into action, talking the Electoral Commission, talking about how he shouldn't be allowed to do this, or when maybe we'll have to limit everybody as a result of this, I think it comes across as very obviously reactionary to this particular individual, and it is coming off the back of the fact that the Reform Party, despite the fact that they don't have very many policies in terms of beyond simply immigration and tax that people know about broadly, they are still sort of quite a niche thing. They are gaining in popularity. They're gaining, obviously, they're gaining on the government, but also they're keeping the Tories within their sights. They're a major threat to the current setup, and you can see, therefore, why people would be concerned by that.
And I keep saying the line, but I'm going to say it again. Here's the guy that wants to occupy Mars. Do you think he'd be stymied by the Electoral Commission?
Not at all. Not at all. As I say, this is a civilizational question for Elon Musk, but not just for him. I think the fact that you've seen people like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos very slowly begin their sort of political journey, these sort of titans of Silicon Valley, they are looking at the direction that Western countries have been going in for a long time. They say this is bad for what we generally perceive as business, but also our vision of the future, be it to do with AI, be it to do with space colonization. They have much broader ambitions than simply, you know, I don't know, benefit policy or something like that. And they are thinking in decades or maybe even longer than that. They've got time, they've got the resources, and they are going to influence the outcome of Western elections going forward.
Chris?
Benedict, it's Christmas time to reflect. Do you think what we're going through with the rise of reform is just too hard governing? It's just too difficult. And you've got the parties that try and do it, keep cocking up, making mistakes. And in fact, the one who does well in the polls is the party that's not even anywhere near government.
There's no question that insurgent parties, and I think it's telling that they're new parties, things like the AfD or in Italy, Fratelli d'Italia, things that are coming from very much a position of a lack of experience in government are doing very well because they can promise things. And perhaps they haven't been sort of battered down by that experience of being in government. But I don't think we should also rule out the fact that both major parties in this country and to a degree in the United States have seen a hollowing out of talent. So actually, I wouldn't even say that there is, you know, it's not necessarily that it's too hard to govern. It is very difficult to govern. But if you don't have the people there with sort of the energy and the imagination to do it either, you're always going to run into problems. It didn't used to be this hard. And actually, our laws are not that different from what they were 20 years ago.
I think it's a fair point. When you think back to some of the titans of yore, are we now bereft of that kind of talent? Talking of which, it is the end of the year. As you said, it's time to Christmas, time to reflect. Sir Keir Starmer today said he has no regrets. About his first 5 months in power. He's facing what I would call a very light grilling. Half of people grilling him work for him in this liaison committee. How do you think the Prime Minister has performed thus far?
I was going to say, I believe him when he says he doesn't have any regrets, because I don't think he is one of the people who has the vision to do anything differently. I think he's very much a proceduralist. That's much to his detriment. How is he doing? I'll give him a 3 out of 10. He's still Prime Minister for a start, which is a really, really good thing in our current climate. Well done you. There's not been a new war in the Middle East, which, Labour politicians of yesteryear have, been drawn into, and there have been plenty of opportunities. I'd say, frankly, he has been handed a very bad hand. There's no doubt about that he inherited. And I don't think it is beyond the possibility that he turns it around. I don't think that he will. But I think the fact that his party is still resolutely behind him, regardless of this issue with the WASPy women, that'll perhaps be a little bit prickly. Broadly speaking, the party is not fractured behind him. There were many concerns that could happen, actually, that you'd see the far left sort of, taking pot shots at him, or people might try to make Europe an issue of division again. For now, that's still fine. So that's 3 issues. I'll give him 3 out of 10. Okay. It's not exactly a ringing endorsement, but it's Christmas.
Chris, I wonder, looking ahead to the new year, it is the end of term, it's the last day in Parliament today. Could there be storm clouds brewing, and perhaps not from the people we expected, not from Jeremy Corbyn, not from the hard left, not from Corbyn's new independent movement, the pro-Gaza mob? What about all those MPs that are in rural constituencies that suddenly find themselves the enemy, if you like, of the farmers? What about those in the constituencies where they've got many more people who lost their winter fuel allowance than the majority that they hold as parliamentarians? Could there be rumblings in the provinces about, well, I wasn't told about this, I've been voted in, and now I've got to face the electorate, and they're not HP about it?
It's not a battle between Labour and the Tories like you might expect over the farming issue, particularly. Often, though, it's Labour's MPs who now look after rural seats. They're saying, well, this was not in the manifesto. Steve Reid, the Environment Secretary, when he was a shadow, said it wouldn't happen. Now it's happened. It's my problem. You're now jeopardising my attempt to hold this seat against what will be, I imagine, a growing stronger Tory party, or even a Reform Party, or Lib Dems. How are you helping me? And I wonder, when this goes to a vote on the issue of agricultural property relief and the like, it comes in April 2026, there could be a bit of a problem here for Keir Starmer. For moderate, quite straightforward, centre-left Labour MPs wondering why on earth they're being shafted for what is the gain here? Is it really enough? Want to be more clever about it? Maybe go after balance sheets, and if you're proving you are a farmer, you're let off from the charge.
Bennett, do you think that could be the case? Could there be this rural revolt, this grey vote revolt, or is the majority so big? Is the election so far away? None of this really matters.
For the time being, I think that's the case. I think there's enough discipline in the Labour Party. They've been out of power for so long, they've just got it again for the first time. They're not going to be looking to sort of carpet bomb their own ability to do things just yet. I also think, frankly, for as long as you have Reform and the Conservatives on a sort of an equal footing, I think Labour will actually be very quietly confident that even as we get close to the election, all manner of bad things can happen, and you can still envisage a path to a majority, a reduced majority, but a majority nonetheless in 4 or 5 years' time. Those two parties cannot coexist. They will keep taking chunks out of each other. They may take the odd vote away from Labour here or there in certain seats, Reform might, but I don't think it's an existential threat to Labour.
You don't think, even with Elon Musk's millions coming in, the Reform Party can't break this hegemony, can't break the first past the post, they can't surge forward?
I think they could break ahead of the Tories. I don't think they could win a majority, and I don't envisage that there's a world in which there could be a coalition government, simply because I think there are enough people in the Conservative Party who would happily lose to see Nigel Farage not to become Prime Minister. But I also think there's far too much vested interest over the Conservative Party surviving rather than the Reform Party.
But the egos are always getting away. Until you deal with egos in the top of the Reform UK Party as much as the Tory Party, you're not going to be able to really beat Labour. They've got to work out a solution, Benedict. And what is that? Is that, let's say, Farage for the leader of the Tory Party because Kevin Badenoch isn't cutting through? Or is it they do a deal the other way around?
I don't think Kemi will make it. I think Robert Jenrick is doing the sensible thing by... he wasn't actually trustworthy this time around because he's not been on this sort of stump long enough. He's not had his Damascene conversion long enough ago enough for people to think, you're trustworthy. They don't know. This is opportunism. We've seen this before. He's now got a good amount of time to continue to set out his stall and say, look, I am the person that can actually take on Nigel Farage. I think the Tories will get jumpy in a couple of years and they'll get rid of Kemi when she's not able to close that gap. And then I think you've got people saying, well, Nigel Farage, very good campaigner, like what he has to say. But Robert Jenrick is the leader of the Conservative Party, and when it comes down to it, the Conservative Party
Kevin
is
Bates
the one that keeps
and
going.
she's intent on going to the end.
Gentlemen, this is the Christmas cracker. We have to simply stop pulling on. Thank you very much indeed, Chris Hope, Ben Spence. Excellent, thank you. Now, coming up, President-elect Donald Trump is vowing to get rid of the entire education department when he returns to the White House. But why does he want to do this? And would it even be allowed? We'll discuss this little bombshell next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
1 in 20 people are diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder across the UK.
Yes, Healthwatch has revealed that men are more likely to suffer from this than women. Did you know?
Triggers apparently include a decrease in daylight hours, which is certainly happening around about now. If you're leaving the office, it's dark. When you come home, it's dark, as well as the falling temperatures.
Yes, and both of those things happen a lot, don't they, here in Britain? So how can we combat the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder? Well, to discuss this, we're joined now by Dr. Andreas Fonseca, the founder and director of Thrive Mental Wellbeing. Really good to see you this morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, there'll be lots of people watching and listening this morning and saying, what a load of rubbish. It's always been cold in this country. It's always been dark. What is seasonal affective disorder? Is it really a thing?
Well, it is a thing, and it's been known for quite some time. This is not new, really. It is a form of depression. That's what it is. And it's got specific characteristics that kind of differentiate it from other forms of depression. So the reason probably we're talking more about it is because it's basically people are more aware of it and they're recognizing it more. So before you used to be sort of just saying this person's got depression, now you have some specific things to look at that can differentiate it from other kinds of depression, which is quite useful because it's got some specific forms of treatment. So the things that are different about seasonal affective disorder are that for the diagnosis you need 2 years in which you only have episodes during either the late autumn or early winter. So that's when they start, and they fade away by late spring, summer. Early summer. So that's how it works. And you cannot have any episodes at any other time. So it has to be seasonal, specifically seasonal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:24 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, please tune in later on for the Nigel Farage live on GB News this evening at 7 p.m, of course. And this time, it is Christmas special. Look at that in his magic Santa hat, where he'll be joined by an audience of 400 people live from Kent. And that is the Farage Christmas special exclusively tonight here on GB News at 7 p.m. Don't miss it. Now it's time now for our biggest and our greatest ever Great British giveaway this year. And I'm afraid it's not $100 million from Elon Musk, but it could be your chance to win £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize that we've ever given away here on GB News, and it could all be yours. And here's the details that you need to win a whopping, juicy, mouth-watering 50 grand tax-free cash over.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Great stuff. Now, here we go, because will Donald Trump scrap the entire education department in the United States? Well, the president-elect, he pledged to do so when he made his pitch to voters during the presidential election campaign, of course, back before November the 5th, on the grounds that the department is staffed, he says, with people who hate our children. However, critics have cast doubts over Trump's ability to get rid of an entire government department. So just how would he go about enacting such a bold and radical policy? Well, I'm delighted to say I'm now joined in the studio to discuss this further with the spokesperson for the Republicans Overseas UK and a great friend of GB News, Jennifer Ewing. Jennifer, welcome to the show and a very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Martin.
Thank you. Now, Donald Trump did promise this before the election and woof, he's dropped the bomb. But the entire department, can that even work? How is it going to work? Is it even possible?
It is possible, and let's keep in mind that a lot of Republicans in the past, probably since 1979, since the department was formed, have talked about this, but they just haven't had the will to do it. The easiest way to do this, and again, it's not going to happen overnight, probably happen over a series of years, would be to give a lot of the decision-making back to the states, right? So if California thinks that they have a great Department of Education, then they can carry on as they like, and other places can change what they have coming out of theirs. But the fact of the matter is, since 1979, when Jimmy Carter brought in the department, the attainable education for people to receive has gone down and down and down. I mean, we can go into, correlation and causation, but it's not working, shall we say. And it's still American public schools are the most highly funded in the world. And I think, it's still a very privileged country, so it's not working. Why not look into dismantling it?
And the numbers involved are eye-watering. I looked into it earlier. It's $120 billion of funding goes into public education. That's 14% of the entire federal budget, a huge sum of money, a huge head count of people. So there's an efficiency saving potential. That's Elon Musk's baby, the Department of Government Efficiency. There's also, though, Trump has talked repeatedly about the racial, sexual and the political indoctrination of American kids. He says now that it's a finishing school for wokeism. He wants to kick out funding from any schools that implement diversity, equity and inclusion practices. It sounds like he really means business.
No, definitely. And I think if you look at the studies that show reading, writing, science, arithmetic, that sort of thing, like our students continue to be on the decline, right? And a lot of the theory is because in some of these classrooms, they are being taught either critical race theory or DEI, that sort of stuff. So yes, there's a huge portion of, I think, what Trump wants, what Elon Musk wants is like, this is not school's business to teach these kids that. If people want to teach them, their parents want to teach them at home, that's fine. They just want to give people more choices and put the money, all of this, these crazy numbers that you just mentioned, put it back with the parents. Again, we've got a federalist system, which means states can decide. So nothing that big government does has ever benefited anyone. So some of it's the woke stuff, some of it's because the results aren't good, and some of it's because it's just bloat.
And what would happen here is that the massive bloated department would be broken down. Most likely, as you said, the departments would be sanctioned out to states. Seems like a common sense thing to do. Like, people know there's a huge difference, for example, what children want to be taught in places like Arkansas, places like California. It's a huge country, vast political landscape, very, very different liberal, rural values. It would make sense, would it not, to put more power to the provinces?
No, it completely would. And just like with lockdown, if you did not like the way your state was being governed, i.e. New York or California, then you could go to Texas or Arizona or Florida. So parents will get to vote with their feet. And, you know, once you see a little bit more exodus, perhaps California will learn, hey, we better just get back to the basics of reading, writing, arithmetic. That's all anybody wants, is educating kids.
Seems like it's going to be one heck of a ride, and please join us back on GB News as President Trump gets his feet under that desk back in January. Thank you very much. That's Jennifer Ewing. Thanks for joining us on GB News. Thank you. Lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including how a game-changing new breast cancer treatment is a once-a-day pill could be a genuine lifesaver for hundreds of women. We'll get more on this huge story next, but now it's time for your news headlines, and here's Joe Casper.
Good afternoon. It's 30 minutes past 5. I'm Joe Casper in the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer has insisted he would not have done anything differently if he were to start his tenure as Prime Minister again. He's been facing questions from senior MPs and government departments at the Liaison Committee this afternoon. The questioning focused on the state of the UK economy, potential trade deals for the country, house building targets and the need for a ceasefire in Gaza. At the end, the Prime Minister was asked if he would do anything differently following criticism for decisions including denying WASPy women compensation, imposing new inheritance tax measures on farmers and a cut to winter fuel payments.
No, we had to do tough stuff. We're getting on with it, and I'm very pleased to be delivering from a position of power rather than going around the division lobbies losing every night. I've had too much of that.
Water bills in England and Wales are to rise by an average of 36% over the next 5 years, water regulator Ofwat announced today. That's the equivalent of an extra £31 a year. The regulator said the increase would pay for a £104 billion upgrade of the water sector to deliver substantial lasting improvements for customers and the environment. Ofwat is already facing backlash, with Liberal Democrat environment spokesman Tim Farron describing the regulator as toothless and defunct. It comes as around 58,000 homes in Hampshire are without water due to a technical issue, Southern Water is saying. The response to the incident is being coordinated by the government. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds spoke about the increase earlier today.
I think everyone recognises this is another absolutely dreadful inheritance the new government has, and the changes that have been announced, the work that the Department of the Environment have been able to do on this, means that we will tackle the horrendous problem of sewage in our waterways, that we will have a more efficient system, will deliver the level of investment that is required, and will make sure money is no longer leached out of the system by way of bonuses and dividends when a good service that the public deserve is not being provided. So it's a set of changes that deliver that long-term investment that will make sure these problems, which the British public are rightly angry about, will not happen again.
Giselle Pellicot has said that she never regretted a decision to make her trial public and that she respects the court's decision after her ex-husband was sentenced to 20 years in jail. 72-year-old Dominique Pellicot has been found guilty today of raping, drugging and inviting other men to rape his ex-wife Giselle. His lawyer says that he's considering lodging an appeal. The French court in Avignon found 47 men guilty of rape, 2 guilty of attempted rape and 2 guilty of sexual assault in a mass rape trial. Those men have now all been sentenced and the defendants have 10 days to appeal. The Pellicot case made headlines after Giselle waived her right to anonymity, saying she wanted to make shame swap sides from the victim to the rapist. That's all your headlines for now. Now to your financial update.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2530 and €1.2087. The price of gold is £2,070 and 77 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed the day at 8,105 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into this evening, we'll see showers die away, leaving plenty of dry spells overnight. Staying fairly cold, though, with some rain arriving later from the northwest. And the reason it's felt a lot chillier this afternoon is because we've got a cold northerly flow of air which is stretching across the country. Plenty of isobars on the chart too, which is adding on to that brisk northwesterly flow of air too. But largely as we head into this evening, there'll be plenty of clear skies as we see those showers die away. Too breezy for a widespread frost, though we may see some pockets around sheltered rural areas. And then by the time we reach dawn, we'll see some outbreaks of rain just start to clip western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland too. And it will start to turn quite blustery here too by the time we reach Friday morning. Then through the course of Friday, we'll continue to see these outbreaks of rain slowly edge their way southeastwards. Looking at the brighter colours, we can see that rain is going to be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly as it starts to move its way into western coasts, similar towards western parts of Northern Ireland too. This rain could be quite heavy at times. Largely dry elsewhere, though we can't rule out a few showers across Wales and parts of southwest England. And there will still be plenty of dry weather around on Friday, away from this area of rain, which will continue to gradually move its way southeastwards, and this still once again heavy and persistent at times. But to the far north of this, it will turn clearer, though still once again fairly blustery showers moving in around coasts. These could be heavy with some hail at times, may even see some snow across some hilly areas. Temperatures up by a degree or two, but still feeling fairly chilly in those brisk northwesterly winds. Then through the course of the evening, we'll eventually say goodbye to that area of cloud and rain as it moves its way towards the southwest. Clearer behind, though we will gradually see some more outbreaks of rain move their way in from the northwest. And fairly unsettled over the weekend with some strong winds at times, so do stay up to date with our warnings. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King. In Buckinghamshire, the clockwise M25 long delays at the moment. It's partly blocked after an accident between junctions 16 at the M40 and 17 at Maple Cross. In London at Finsbury Park, Alden Road on the A503 currently closed in both directions. Long delays after an accident between the 12 pins at traffic lights and Finsbury Park Station. In Lincolnshire at Spalding, the A151 currently partly blocked both ways. Long delays after an accident just near Pinchbeck Road. In the West Midlands, northbound M5 looking very busy, approaching the M6. Delays around 30 minutes to get through there. And in North Lanarkshire, the southbound M80 looking busy after an earlier accident just near the junction 4 at the M73. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:39 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, got some news broke in the last hour, and it's this. The anti-Keir Starmer parody song, Freezing This Christmas, is hit #1 in the official singles downloads chart. Let's give you a reminder once more of this song.
It'll be freezing this Christmas while Keir Starmer's warm.
So it's #1 in the official downloads. It was also #1 on the iTunes chart and #1 on the global chart. But global wouldn't mention the name of the artist, which of course is Sir Starmer and the Granny Harmers. And Freezing This Christmas, of course, is the parody of Mud's Lonely This Christmas. All proceeds go to charity. And I've just been told that 4 p.m. tomorrow is the moment where the Christmas #1 is decided. They combine the sales, the downloads, the streaming via a complex algorithm. The wizards work out what the actual Christmas #1 is going to be at 4 p.m. tomorrow, apparently. Of course, that will be happening live and direct on the show. Will it be Freezing This Christmas? We'll find out in just under 24 hours' time. Now, moving on, a revolutionary breast cancer pill will be made available to more than 1,000 women with advanced cases of the cancer. And the new recommendations represent a significant advancement in the treatment of advanced breast cancer, offering new hope to patients with limited options. I'm joined now in the studio by GB News' Science and Health Editor Lucy Johnson to discuss more on this. Lucy, welcome to the show. An amazing piece of news for people, particularly at Christmas. But let's just be realistic about what this drug is capable of. What's the drug called and what particular patients will it be useful for? It's not a miracle cure for everybody, is it?
No, and I don't think we'll ever get that with cancer. So cancers, there's lots of different types of cancers, and this one is targeting a particular mutation in a particular type of cancer, and that means anyone who might be eligible will need a test to find out if they have that mutation, which is why it will help about, they reckon, 1,100 patients. So it's called Elastrant, and it's very good news that the drug regulator has decided to approve it, because there was some controversy about that, and there's been a bit of a debate. Only just 2 months ago, the drug regulator said it wouldn't approve it. It didn't think the drug was worth rolling out on the NHS. And then after talks with the manufacturers and looking at the data a bit more closely, it's now decided to do that. So on the one hand, you've got patient groups that are campaigning for more drugs to be regulated, and then NICE often being a bit more slow and a bit more careful about the data it looks at and saying resources are not finite and we can't just provide endless pots of money for every drug that comes along, because obviously there's more drugs coming on all the time.
That's it. And this particular drug, it does give in trials, apparently, it halts the disease progression by an extra 6 months compared with standard treatments. 6 months is a priceless amount of time for anybody, Lucy Johnson. But of course, there is a price associated with all of these drugs, particularly on end of life. And as you mentioned earlier, also we saw with new treatments on Alzheimer's and weight loss drugs, there is a limited amount of budget that the NHS has to play with, but this particular U-turn for these 1,000 women is fantastic news.
It is. There is another drug which breast cancer charities are campaigning for, which does similar thing with a different mutation, and they're saying that the drug regulator it's called Enhertu, should approve that as well. And there's a big fight on that. There's a fight over whether we approve a drug to treat Alzheimer's early, but then NICE says, well, the benefits are not good enough, the cost is too high, and actually there are risks with the drug. So really it looks at benefits of the drug against the risks and against the cost of the drug. And I'm afraid everyone's life is only worth a certain amount of money, up to £50,000 really, and normally about £20,000 to £30,000 per year. It has to do that, otherwise the bank would be bankrupt.
And Lucy Johnson, what about the thorny topic of Ozempic, fat jabs on the NHS to help people to lose weight? Of course, that could save the NHS money, but people could just stop eating. Is it really the government's job to give away free jabs on the taxpayers' bill just to get people to lose weight when they could just, avoid the cake?
They could. We do have a toxic food environment that all the public health measures that we've done to try and reduce obesity haven't really worked. And giving a jab, the long-term data on that jab isn't there. And that's what the drug regulator says. It works, but it works with help on diet and exercise. And I'm afraid the NHS probably doesn't have enough resources to keep doing these infusions every 2 weeks and keeping people, checking them for side effects, checking they're not suffering those, and making sure they're doing the diet and exercise as well, because having drugs long-term, indefinitely, we don't know the risks, and it may not be worth it for people.
Super. So thank you very much, Lucy Johnson there. Great news for those 1,100 women per year eligible for that drug to give an extra 6 months to their lives. Thank you very much, Lucy. Excellent as ever. Thank you. Now, moving on, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There will actually be some hazardous weather across parts of southern Europe through the next few days, with a strong Mistral wind developing over southern France and into Corsica, leading gusts here of around 70 miles per hour and some hefty showers with that as well. Further east, and we have some heavy thunderstorms pushing across parts of Greece and into Turkey, and here we could see rainfall totals building up to around 200 millimetres. Elsewhere, there will be some fine weather around, with temperatures near or a little bit below average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Now, coming up, I'll speak with an amazing man who's spending this Christmas walking from London to Cardiff to raise funds for a mental health charity. An inspiring man. He's in the building. He's in the studio next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Fabio, thank you for coming in. It's great to see you.
Nice to meet you.
So you were born near Rome?
Yeah, in a very small town. It's called Serrone, about an hour south of Rome. Yeah, on the hillside.
Was it a place of excellent cuisine?
It is indeed a place of excellent cuisine and red wines. In fact, it's the only DOCG red wine of the region. Yeah.
Most of your career, I mean, this may seem self-evident, you've cooked Italian. I'm thinking that's quite a challenge to cook Italian in Malaysia, to cook Italian in Bermuda or Turkey. Was that a challenge?
It was, yeah, but I like challenges, so that's one of the reasons why I started to travel, because of my job. For example, in Malaysia, I've been sent there to twist a grill restaurant into an Italian restaurant inside a five-star hotel. And I was doing the chef training for the local chefs. And then I build the menus, I train the chefs, and then I eventually go back.
In Italian food, is there lots of innovation?
I would say in the past 10 years, yes. It used to be a very traditional cuisine, but in the past 10, 15 years, Italian chefs, they are a bit more open-minded, I would say.
Give us some examples of your innovation.
Well, hide and seek is very well around the innovation. In that bar is a bar and kitchen where we have a sherry plate concept, where we try to take our guests in a culinary journey, starting from a classic dish and then reinventing to a modern twist. Usually I like to twist the style of cuisine between different countries, different continents.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:49, almost 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. A wonderful, inspiring story to end today's show, because a mindfulness coach is spent Christmas walking from London to Cardiff to help raise funds for a mental health charity, Mind. Bhupinder Sandhu from Kent will set off from Parliament Square this coming Saturday and will spend the following 8 days walking the 160 miles to the Welsh Parliament, the Senedd. This will be Mr Sandhu's second long-distance charity walk, having previously walked from London to the Scottish Parliament, Holyrood in Edinburgh. And I'm delighted to say that I'm now joined in the studio by this inspiring individual, Bhupinder Sandhu. I want to start by shaking your hand. What a thing to do. Can I start by asking you, what was your original motivation to do such an extraordinary thing?
It's very personal to me how it started, these walks. Last year when I went in February to India to see my family, my father didn't recognize me. Initially I thought he's just joking, but for an army man, he never joked. So after a couple of minutes, I could realize that it's serious. And that was like heartbreaking for me. That absolutely hit me. And when I came back, I was in that process. As a mindfulness coach, I talk to people, I help them. But this thing was just like at the back of my mind. And then all of a sudden, this idea came to my mind that I need to do something bigger. This message about mental health problems need to go to more people so they can work on it. Because working on mental health problems is not an issue. It's becoming aware that we have a problem is the bigger issue. So that was the motivation. So last year, as you said, the first idea came in because mental health problem is very big. That's why I thought challenge has to be big. So Scotland came to my mind. And then December, because mental health is that sort of problem. You can't go to Scotland in August holidays in summer. You have to do it in winters because that's the problem. That's the severity of mental health problems today in the world.
And you're hoping to raise, what, 10 grand plus for the charity Mind.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, we saw some pictures there, you're speaking in Parliament. I believe you've also spoken in the House of Lords, Bhupinder, and there's pictures of you there out in the wilderness. Can I ask you, is walking in itself like a form of therapy to you? What do you get into that loneliness, that isolation where are you processing as you go along? Is that what you're doing?
You know, like it's sort of a meditation for me. When I'm walking, there's a hollowness in my head. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just enjoying where I am, following my next step, enjoying the nature, or the rain, or the wind, whatever comes your way. Because when you start thinking about the future, how I'm going to do this and that, then you lose the track. Then you're not in the present. And as a mindfulness coach, what I teach people is live in the present. So that was the test. And it's always the test of what I preach as well. It's very easy to sit in a studio in a very nice office space and lecture about mindfulness. But out there, when you don't know what's in front of you, I think that's test of your mental resilience as well. So that first walk was all about it. That was test of my theory in the practical life.
Now, if anybody wants to sponsor you, if anybody wants to get involved, times are tight, but if people want to bung you a few quid, how could they get involved?
My fundraiser page is on Just Giving, London to Cardiff, so they can search for it and donate there.
Yeah. And tell me about, quickly if you could, the speech you gave in Lord's Parliament. How did it feel for a man like yourself just to be getting your message across to the great and the powerful?
It's simple. Like for somebody like me, I'm passionate about mental health, especially spreading the message of mindfulness. Being there when likes of Matt Hancock and GP Hinduja, the richest man in this country, are present, when you speak in front of them, it's all about sharing your message with the top. Once they understand the importance of it, it filters down easily. Rather than spreading it to 300,000 people, it's hard, but you go to the top, and then it filters down.
Thank you very much, Bhupinder Sandhu. We have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us in the studio, and very good luck with that walk to Cardiff. Now, that's all from me today, but don't worry, because up next is Tubes & Co, the fierce debate show in town. And, of course, later on, 7 p.m, Farage, live from Kent with an audience of 400. Make sure you don't miss out. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m, but now it's time for your weather. And here's Honor Krizik.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into this evening, we'll see showers die away, leaving plenty of dry spells overnight. Staying fairly cold, though, with some rain arriving later from the northwest. And the reason it's felt a lot chillier this afternoon is because we've got a cold northerly flow of air which is stretching across the country. Plenty of isobars on the chart too, which is adding on to that brisk northwesterly flow of air too. But largely as we head into this evening, there'll be plenty of clear skies as we see those showers die away. Too breezy for a widespread frost, though we may see some pockets around sheltered rural areas. And then by the time we reach dawn, we'll see some outbreaks of rain just start to clip western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland too. And it will start to turn quite blustery here too by the time we reach Friday morning. Then through the course of Friday, we'll continue to see these outbreaks of rain slowly edge their way southeastwards. Looking at the brighter colours, we can see that rain is going to be quite heavy and persistent at times, particularly as it starts to move its way into western coasts, similar towards western parts of Northern Ireland too. This rain could be quite heavy at times. Largely dry elsewhere, though we can't rule out a few showers across Wales and parts of southwest England. And there will still be plenty of dry weather around on Friday, away from this area of rain, which will continue to gradually move its way southeastwards, and this still once again heavy and persistent at times. But to the far north of this, it will turn clearer, though still once again fairly blustery showers moving in around coasts. These could be heavy with some hail at times, may even see some snow across some hilly areas. Temperatures up by a degree or two, but still feeling fairly chilly in those brisk northwesterly winds. Then through the course of the evening, we'll eventually say goodbye to that area of cloud and rain as it moves its way towards the southwest. Clearer behind, though we will gradually see some more outbreaks of rain move their way in from the northwest. And fairly unsettled over the weekend with some strong winds at times, so do stay up to date with our warnings. Bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to